All right, so you should see the screen that we left off on, the slide that we left off on from yesterday, this 3-step process to become transformational. Yesterday we covered the vision. Now we're going to cover number 2, overcome. So what do I mean by overcome? What are we going to overcome? Here's the importance. How many times have you complained to yourself about procrastinating, being lazy, self-sabotaging, being afraid to fail, and even worse, fear of success? Why do I say even worse with fear of success? You do not have a fear of success. I really hate it when people say this. Sometimes I think people just are repeating what someone else said and it sounds good. I think also sometimes gurus are actually using this to create a problem in your mind that does not exist. And if the problem doesn't exist, you're going to go searching for a solution that does not exist. And that is a way that they can manipulate you into bringing you back to them and saying, yeah, I'll solve that problem. I'll put that fire out that I started for you if you give me a bunch of money. You don't have a fear of success. You may have a fear of change, a fear of the unknown. Yes, all of those things. But succeeding, basically meaning achieving what you want, getting what you want, you're not afraid of that. So if someone ever tells you that, just go, no, that's creating a problem that doesn't exist. And you'll go into a tailspin trying to solve something that doesn't exist. And it's just going to drag you down and waste a lot of energy. You could be solving bigger and better problems. So all of these terms are not really helpful. And in some cases, they're actually harmful. So let's just call this resistance. Whatever your resistance is, when you look at your vision, the one that we created yesterday, created from your values, if you feel any sort of limitation, any fear, any somebody was mentioned earlier, I don't think I can really believe that I can ever do this. This is what we call resistance. Resistance is what is holding you back from changing even once you're clear about what you want. Sometimes just knowing your values and having a vision is enough. But if you don't immediately make the changes in order to actualize that vision, it means something is holding you back. The good news is that once you understand what resistance really is, it's not difficult to deal with. How do you feel right now when you think about always being able to handle any obstacle and any resistance you experience? You will become unstoppable when you do what I'm about to show you. So you can apply this to any kind of resistance about anything that you want to do. And it's a very simple process. So we're going to elicit that resistance. We're going to elicit the values of the objection being whatever the resistance is labeled as or however it comes out, like a limiting belief or even a word or a feeling. And we're going to integrate those values into your vision. Now, this might not make any sense to you whatsoever, but it will shortly. So first, we need to understand what resistance is and what it is not. Because what happens is people don't understand this. They feel something inside of them holding them back. And because they can't see it and they don't know what it is, they start making up these stories about it. Like, I have this inner being inside of me that's trying to sabotage me, or my unconscious is trying to sabotage me. We start making up all these crazy stories about it. But what happens is as you make up these stories about what's happening within you, this makes it even worse, because it makes it feel like there's a separate part of you that is independent of you that is really stopping you. And this is just not true. So it is not some part of you that wants you to fail. I get this so much. And I felt this before. I remember experiencing this, that I really felt like there was something in me that was causing me to fail, that wanted me to fail. And when I work with clients, this often comes up and they'll say, can you just get rid of this part? And it's like, we have to have a better understanding of what's happening. And no, I will not help you get rid of part of yourself, because all parts of you are valid. This part of you that you may demonize or feel like is trying to harm you or make you fail, it actually wants you to be fulfilled just as much as any other part of you. It wants fulfillment for your good. So it's not this thing that's trying to fight you or stop you. So why does it resist? Why do we have this experience? So let's get something clear, because this seems to be a little bit mysterious for people. And the unconscious mind is a bit mysterious, but it's probably not as mysterious as you think it is. So we have a conscious mind and we have an unconscious mind. They're not two separate minds. They're two parts of one whole mind. Okay. The way that people talk about the unconscious, and some people call it the subconscious. I don't like to call it that because sub usually means less than. It's not a less than part of your mind. It's just all the things that you're not conscious of. So conscious mind, all that you're consciously aware of. So at any point, anything in your consciousness can easily slip into unconsciousness. It's anything that you're not paying attention to, but is still in your mind, like memories. The unconscious mind, it's all that's happening in your mind that you're just not consciously aware of, like what's making your heart beat, your eyes blink, and what's causing those annoying ruminating thoughts. Like we might be conscious of the ruminating, the thoughts that you're ruminating on, but we're not conscious of what is causing it to ruminate like that. So that's all that your unconscious mind actually is. And any resistance that you're experiencing and you don't know why, you don't know what the origin of it is, that's because that part of it is unconscious. And this is the part where I was saying, this is the part where oftentimes people start making up stories about this, about what, this inner saboteur or whatever these ideas are about what's holding you back. And like I said, that just makes it worse because it turns it into a character, or maybe even when the more people personify it, the more it actually feels like there's like this person inside of you that's trying to stop you. And that's just not true. So here's what we need to understand. All resistance has a positive intention, a value it's seeking to fulfill. So another word for positive intention is value. When you have an intention, that means you want to fulfill that intention. You want to, there's a value there that you want to fulfill. That's what intention is. Without that, without a value to fulfill, you would not have any intentions. And all of your choices, all of your decisions, all of your behaviors, even if you're not conscious of the intention, all of them have an intention. Even behavior that seems to not make sense anymore. People engage in habits that don't serve them. In fact, they get in the way of something that you want to achieve. But the behavior that's stopping you seems rather meaningless. I don't understand why I do this. It still has an intention. Just because you don't know the intention doesn't mean there isn't one. So all parts of you, even the ones creating resistance, are valid and seek fulfillment. So this is why we do not want to demonize parts of us. All of them are valid. All parts of you are valid. All parts of you are seeking fulfillment. And you cannot willpower or discipline resistance away. I'm amazed at how many gurus out there are still pushing this idea. If you can't, you must. You need to just power through it. You just need to beat yourself and a part of yourself into submission. This never works because you're just shoving a part of yourself even deeper into your unconscious, a part of you that's just trying to fulfill an intention for you. And in fact, an intention that you gave it. And so you forgot what that intention is. It's gone unconscious. The behavior is manifesting. And then your conscious mind goes, whoa, that's getting in our way of doing this other thing that we want to do. I need to will and discipline myself down. I need to beat my part of myself into submission so I can go and do this thing that I want to do. But when we do that, we're basically fighting part of ourselves. And if it's like an internal fight like that, no one wins. Maybe you do achieve what you want, but you had to beat a part of yourself into submission to do it. So you're not going to feel whole. You're not going to feel fulfilled because part of you didn't get fulfilled. So when you have clarity about what you want and you've removed this resistance, which gives you even greater clarity about what you want, because now you're not fighting yourself anymore. Everything's integrated. You don't need willpower and discipline. You don't need to fight yourself. You don't need to beat up on yourself. That only takes away from your motivation and takes away from your fulfillment. All resistance is outdated programs seeking to fulfill an intention you gave it at some point in your life that has since become isolated from the rest of you. A lot of this stuff, especially stuff around the feeling of low self-worth, a lot of this originated when you were a kid or formative years. And that makes sense, right? Because that's when your personality is developing. It's also the reason why you don't remember this. It's also the reason why your intentions are unconscious, is because it happened a long time ago. And when all of it happened, you gave the intention and you forgot about it. It went unconscious. But that part of you is doing what you asked it to do. I'm going to show you what I mean by this by illustrating it with a true story. So everybody knows who Hiro Onoda is, right? No, I don't expect you to know who this is. Who was he? He was the last Japanese World War II soldier to surrender in 1974. That's right, in 1974, 29 years after Japan surrendered. Now you might be thinking, what does this have to do with positive intention and resistance and all that? I'll show you. In 1944, he was sent to an island in the Philippines in order to do all he could to hamper enemy attacks, and under no circumstances was he to surrender or take his own life. He continued to fight for Japan despite the end of the war, despite repeated attempts by Japanese officials, Filipino officials, and even his family members' pleas to surrender. He simply did not know that the war had ended because he had lost communication with Japan, and he didn't trust anyone that they had sent to find him. So he's given his mission, his orders. He loses contact with his command in Japan. The war ends, Japan surrenders, but he doesn't know this, so he's still carrying out his orders. And even when they sent family and friends into the jungle and called out to him and said, hey, please come back home, surrender, Japan surrendered, the war is over, he didn't believe any of it. He thought they were lying or they were sent there by the enemy. And he upheld his mission. He kept going until his commanding officer, so the one who gave him the orders, who was now a bookseller, put on his old uniform and met with him and gave him the new orders. That was the only way that he finally backed down and left the jungle and went back to Japan, integrated back into his home, his country. Though not the only Japanese soldier to be found still fighting long after the war had ended, he was the most extreme. In order to get these soldiers to come out of hiding, they realized that trying to fight with them only validated and strengthened their resistance. Are you starting to understand this? Are you starting to see a theme here? To get them to surrender, they would find their commanding officer, have them wear their old uniform, and call out to them thanking them for their service. If you're fighting your own resistance, stop. You're just resisting resistance. And just like the Japanese soldier, you are strengthening your resistance when you fight it. Stop resisting resistance, or else you make the resistance stronger. So what do we need to do here? It's amazing how we function internally as we often function externally. That resistance you need to connect with. Find what its positive intention originally was, what the intention was that you gave it. And you need to give it new orders to integrate it back into who you are, just like the Japanese soldier. So once you've created your vision from your values and you've added that ideal image of yourself, remember this from what you did yesterday, you ask yourself a simple question. What stops me from making this vision a reality? So let's start there. You have your vision. You made it yesterday. So just see it again. And when you see it, ask yourself, what stops me from making this happen? Or is there anything that stops me from making this happen? Because sometimes I've done this exercise with people and I ask them that once we have the vision, I say, is there anything stopping you? And they check in with themselves and I go, no. I'd say, okay, what's the first thing you're going to do now? And they will give me a list of steps they're going to take or actions they're going to take or new behaviors that they're going to engage in. But for most people, we have something that's holding us back because otherwise we would have created this already. If nothing is stopping you, then there's no resistance, just like I mentioned. So there are some people like that. But chances are that's not what will happen. You're likely to say things like, I have a fear of failing, fear of disappointing myself, not enough money, not enough time, too old, too young, not good enough, not capable, or it's too difficult. Now, the one where people really get hung up on the thing of like the stuff that they feel like they can't control, like I don't have enough money, or I'm not old enough, or I'm not young enough. Again, though, even though that seems like something external, there is something going on there internal. And there's no reason to not pursue what you want because you think you don't have the money or the time or the wisdom, whatever that, whatever that, however that you might see that. It will appear that way externally, but that's not actually where the true limitation lies. It's time to reframe your objections by focusing on the positive intent driving your resistance. Another word for positive intent, like I mentioned earlier, is value. They're the same thing. When you have a fear about something, you're focused on what you don't want. I was saying this yesterday. When people put security real high on their list, or the security keeps coming up as a value, that tells me right there, they're focused way too much on their fear. And if you're focused on your fear, then yeah, that'll paralyze you. You won't do anything. But that's not actually true. Like most of you, I would hope, you're not in a war zone. You're safe. You can do things. You're not just surviving. You're more focused on what you fear. That fear is so blinding that it blocks out what you do want, so that all you can see is what you don't want. And this is why it's so important to have a vision. And this is why it's so important to identify that limitation or what you're afraid of, what you think is holding you back. So what do you want instead? Anytime you're focusing on what you don't want, an alarm should go off in your mind. You should hear a voice that says, okay, what do I want instead? If I'm afraid of failure, what do I want instead? If I'm afraid of rejection, whatever that means, what do I want instead? If I'm afraid of embarrassing myself, what do I want instead? As long as you're focused on what you don't want, not only are you going to be afraid, but your unconscious doesn't know the difference between what you consciously want and what you consciously don't want. So if you're shining the light on all the things that you don't want, and that's where you're putting your attention and your focus, your unconscious is hardwired to follow the clarity, follow anything that seems clear and not confusing. Your unconscious is hardwired to keep you away from things that are confusing and chaotic. So if you're focused on what you don't want, there's no surprise why that's what you're getting in life. So you can ask yourself these questions. What stops me? I see my vision and I ask, what stops me? Or does anything stop me? You can ask that question as well. And then when that comes up, it's usually going to be stated in the negative, as in, I don't want to fail. I don't want to be disappointed. I don't want to be embarrassed, right? So you ask that part of you that's resisting, what do you want instead? And then you do the next question. What's important about that? Is this starting to sound familiar? This is what you did yesterday. What you did yesterday is you elicited the values behind something you consciously want, something you know you want, right? What you didn't know is what were the unconscious intentions driving that? What were the unconscious values that you want to fulfill as a result of achieving that goal? That part was unconscious, but now it's conscious. And now that you're looking at that vision in front of you and you feel some resistance or an objection to making that happen, it's time to make that conscious. Not only that, you're going to presuppose that whatever it is that's objecting or resisting has a positive intention for you, because it does. I assure you, it does. So that's what you want to know. Now, like I said, you first have to get this stated in the positive. You cannot, I'm going to say, I don't like to speak in absolutes, but it's very difficult, if not impossible, to elicit values from an away from strategy, meaning being focused on what you don't want. So if I say, I don't want to fail, it's really hard to then say, okay, well, what's important about not failing? You can ask that question, but you're typically going in the wrong direction. So if I say, what's stopping me is I don't want to fail, What we want to do is we'll say, okay, what do you want instead of failure? And then from there, ask these questions. What's important about that? What would that do for you? So like fear of failing, what do you want instead of failing? Fear of disappointing myself, what do you want instead of disappointing myself? Oftentimes, fear of failing is because that part of you wants success. That part of you wants to succeed. And success is a value, isn't it? So instead of focusing on succeeding by not failing, we can reframe, reorient, and integrate this part to focus on succeeding. Now, do you think that would help you out in succeeding? If instead of the resistant part holding you back because it's afraid of failure, if instead you get that part to integrate with you, go along with you to help you succeed. Yeah, like now you're not dividing yourself anymore. Now you're not splitting yourself anymore. Now you're not having to fight yourself anymore. You've made an ally out of your resistance. And now that part realizes, is now back with the whole you, realizing that this together, integrated, is how we make this happen. So fear of disappointing myself, what do I want instead? Oftentimes it's happiness. It's not the only other value, but oftentimes it is. So that part of you that you think is trying to hold you back actually wants to fulfill an important value for you. Now I can go into why and how all of this happens. It's not important for what I want to teach here today. But there's lots of good reasoning behind this. Why we have these resistances, why these parts of us try to hold us back. The important thing, though, is not to understand the why. It's interesting, but it's not understanding the why doesn't really help you. What helps you is this exercise of integrating these parts back. So like I said, happiness and success, they're values, right? At the core of resistance is a positive intention, a value. There always is. And if you think like, well, no, there's no way because this resistance is really nasty and ugly. Trust me, if you go deep enough, you will find that it originated from a positive intention. We don't do things to not to how do I would even say that? Everything that you do is an attempt to fulfill an intention, a value, something you want to fulfill yourself some way. Okay. Now, sometimes that's really short-sighted. Sometimes you have some really negative strategies. Sometimes you have some really negative behaviors. But at its core is always something you're trying to do to get something you want, to try to make something better. You don't do the opposite. You don't try to really hurt yourself or harm yourself. Now, people say, well, I know people who harm themselves. Yes, it's a different thing. It's a different discussion. But even at the core of that is an intention for some type of fulfillment. It's just a really destructive strategy. So you want to fill in these blanks, right? You saw this yesterday. It's the same, basically the same structure. So instead of saying what you want, as in what you want to achieve, you're taking the resistance, you're making sure it's stated in the positive intention, meaning I want blank instead of failure, instead of disappointment, instead of fear, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you know what it is in the positive, then you say, what will, whatever this new answer is, do for you? There's going to be an answer. It will give me fill in the blank, and then you keep asking the questions and what's important about that. So you elicit the values behind your resistance, behind your objection. So what you need is not to try to beat up on your resistance, right? That you're not going anywhere when you do that. When you say, oh, I need more willpower, I need more discipline, I need to try to submit this part of me, you're just stopping yourself completely. You're making it worse. So we don't want to do that. Your resistance needs to be integrated so that you can stop fighting yourself and fully and completely align to your vision. So we're going to back this up to these questions, and I'll give you a few moments to elicit these values from your resistance. So you start with, see your vision. You ask yourself, is anything stopping me? Is any part of me objecting to this? Is any part of me resisting creating this? And you listen. Sometimes it comes out as a voice. Sometimes it'll be a feeling. Sometimes it'll be a visual. You just open that space for the question. Now, your conscious mind's probably going to want to jump in there and fill the void, because that's what your conscious mind is really good at doing. Let it have its say. Don't fight that either. We don't want to add more resistance to this. But there's a deeper part of you that's not used to being heard. And that's the part you want to listen to. So if there's an objection, what is that about? What is the positive intention behind that? And then, like I said, it normally comes out stated in the negative. That's why we have the problem that we have. It's trying to move away from something. Okay. But moving away from something, trying to achieve something by moving away from it is like trying to run backwards at it. It does not work very well. So we want to find out what is its intention. And usually we have to get stated in the positive. What do you want instead? And then elicit the values from that, just like you did yesterday. I'll give you a few moments to do that. I'll be quiet because I know when people are listening to me, they're not, you're not doing the exercise. So do the exercise now. Yes, Vicky, this is a parts integration. Okay, I keep saying this. You're not lacking discipline. That's not the problem. So authenticity is great. So now you can see that your resistance, that was the problem. This part of you is probably concerned that you're not going to be authentic if you go about this way. So you can ask yourself, how could you go about this in a way that is authentic? So I want discipline, trust, and higher energy. Okay, so trust. What do you want to trust? And when is it time to trust and when is it not time to trust? Because there are definitely people and things out there that you do not want to trust. So what do you mean by trust? Do you mean trust yourself? Well, now we're into a different issue. When you are aligned with your values and you're integrating resistance, trust is implicit because you know yourself better. So trust is usually not something, and the way that I think you're meaning it, is not something that you can go at directly. Trust can be a value in the sense of you see people who just don't trust anybody. They're like hyper cynical and skeptical to the point where it's really crippling them. Then trust as a value is good to pursue. Discipline implies that you're having to discipline yourself to make something happen. No, just get clear, get organized, get focused. That's what you need, not discipline. And high energy, that's so vague. And you don't want to be high energy all the time. You can't be high energy. I'll give you my own example. Working on YouTube, it takes a lot of energy and it takes sustained growth, and you got to work on it consistently. If I was trying to pump high energy through that the entire time, I would totally burn out. You need the right amount of energy, not high energy. Can you have resistance even if you know your values and are still moving in the direction of your goal? Is doubt resistance? That's a great question, by the way. Yes, a lot of us are actually doing what we want, pursuing what we want with some resistance, and we just feel like, well, it's just kind of how we have to. Just part of what we're dealing with, but we're still moving forward. Yeah, that's totally possible. And that's what I was saying. So there's people who can really push past their resistance, invoke willpower and discipline, and they'll achieve what they want. But the problem is they're not very fulfilled when they achieve that. Why? Because they've had to basically submit part of themselves, and that part is not getting fulfilled, and it's not getting what you want. So you're not fulfilled because you're not whole as you pursue this. But there are people who are, willpower is like a muscle. You can strengthen it. And you can see people have achieved amazing things. But if they're always having to will and discipline themselves to do it, I guarantee you they're not living a fulfilled life. And you don't need that. You can achieve great things and, bring wonderful things into the world without having to discipline or will yourself to do it. It's just a fight you think you have to have with yourself. To achieve what you want. It's not true. It's not necessary. Let's see. Can you see if you know your values and still moving in the direction of is doubt resistance? Doubt is resistance if you're actually not acting. You're not doing anything. If doubt is causing you to hesitate, to wait, then yes, it's resistance. We don't want to get rid of doubt. Doubt has a very important function for us. When things don't look right, we should doubt them. And this is why I'm not a fan of the word faith. People bring that up. Somebody brought it up yesterday, because doubt is important. Like if something doesn't look right, that part of you that doubts, that's a important part of you trying to send you a message that I need to gather more information here. I need more evidence. Now, there's a part that also can just always doubt. It doubts because it's afraid. And so really that resistance is rooted in fear. And if that's what's happening, if that's the kind of doubt you're dealing with, it is absolutely resistance. Doubt should not stop you. Doubt should not cause you to hesitate and wait. It temporarily hesitate to make sure that you do your due diligence. But if you're stuck in that state of hesitation where you're not doing anything and you're constantly doubting, it's definitely resistance. What goes in the second sentence blank? The same thing as in the first sentence? The second sentence. Yeah, so whenever new answer comes up, just like what you were doing yesterday with the values elicitation, whatever new answer comes up, like, okay, so I'll walk down this. So like, let's say my fear, my objection is to creating this vision is I'm afraid of failing at it. I'm afraid of failing and not being able to create the vision. I say, okay, well, what do I want instead? Right? And the part tells me, well, I want to succeed at this. Great. So in the first sentence, I would put, I want success instead. And then I'd say, what will success do for me? Okay. It will give me happiness. And what's important about happiness? Well, it'll give me joy. And what's important about joy? It'll give me peace, right? On and on and on. Huge resistance. I can't figure out this part. So stop trying to figure it out. That's another problem. That's your conscious mind trying to figure a problem out that the unconscious holds an answer to. And I hope that doesn't sound too mysterious, because it's not. Okay. So like I said, your conscious mind will try to jump in and answer the question. And sometimes it could be right, but that's not what's most important here. What's most important here is connecting with that part of you. Now, you have likely, if this is resistance that's been buried down in your unconscious, the reason it's buried there is because this was kind of unpleasant for you and you didn't want to deal with it. So you pushed it away and you pushed it away over many, many years. Now, allowing it to resurface is not a painful thing, typically not a painful thing. It's the pushing it away that's painful. What causes suffering other than physical suffering? What causes that internal suffering? Splitting ourselves into parts, splitting ourselves into two, disavowing part of ourselves, having alienated parts of ourselves. And this is all delusion because it's not actually happening. We're all one whole being, no matter how many times or how many splits in our minds we make. And why do we do this? Because we experience painful emotions and painful feelings. So we go, oh, I don't like feeling that. So we try to separate it off from us. We create an imaginary split, which is delusional, that this isn't a part of me. I'm going to block it out. And this is what we call repression. And it gets buried deep into your unconscious. And so now we're bringing it back. But here's the thing. We're not fighting to bring it back. We're relaxing. It's the letting go that is the hardest part of this, but it's actually easy to let go. It's much harder to hold and to strain and to be tense. Now we're going in the opposite direction. It's just not what you're used to yet. That's why it might seem difficult. But again, if it seems difficult and you start fighting with yourself over this, you're just creating more resistance and more of a problem. So it's more about relaxing. It's about asking that question. What is the objection? What is the positive intention behind this objection? And it's sitting in the uncomfortable void that question creates. That's when the magic starts to happen. That's when you start getting answers. And sometimes you need to reassure that part of you, especially if it's kind of a hurt, age regressed part of you, that it's okay, that you know it has a positive intention for you. You're listening now. You're not going to beat up on it. You're not going to push it away. What stops me from getting married is meeting the guy. I don't know what the positive value is. Okay. So do you have a strategy for meeting the guy? Like, I talk to women about this all the time because when honestly I talk to them about it all the time. I more talk to men about this and dating, but every once in a while it'll come up where women are saying they have similar issues meeting men, and I'm like, I really doubt you have issues meeting men. There's something else going on there. And so I think there's a lot of women who are very shy about being assertive when it comes to dating. Now, there's a difference between being assertive and desperate, right? Desperate's really ugly, and assertive, if the man is probably the kind of man that you're looking for, someone who's very secure in themselves, they're likely to find that attractive. Most men do find that attractive if they're secure within themselves. So you could ask yourself, how could you be assertive in meeting men? If you're just sitting there passively waiting for the man to come to you, you're going to get whatever comes your way. And I would not leave that up to chance. As a man who was once single and dating, I realized that if I just kind of wait for whoever seems convenient and whoever kind of likes me, chooses me, this is not going to go well. You want to be active in your search. And if you don't know what kind of man you're looking for, even more reason to search and discover and date and meet different men. So how can you meet more men and be assertive about what you want, just not desperate or needy? Want financial prosperity, health? Great. Okay. Courage. Yeah, courage is good, but keep going. Elicit more values from that. Don't just stop at courage. I don't deserve it. I want love, acceptance instead. What will love and acceptance do for me? It'll give me peace. What's important about it? That's wonderful, Aparna. Very, very good. Yeah. So a lot of us have these sort of deep self-worth issues. Almost all of, pretty much 99% of the population has them. When phrases like "I don't deserve it," "I'm not good enough," there's another one. It'll come to me. These are these sort of deep-rooted self-worth issues, but there are ways to work around it. It's probably an indication that doing more work on yourself would be really important, because those things tend to have their hooks deep within us. But we can unhook them. I've done it. I've done it with clients many times. You can do this. Already have love and peace as values. Is being present the new value elicited? Yes and no. Okay, so some of you, and isn't this amazing? Some of you, when you're eliciting the values from your resistance, some of them are going to be the same values you already elicited yesterday that are in your vision, right? Isn't that amazing? Think about that for a second. The thing that was holding you back, the reason it was holding you back was because its intention, the value it was pursuing, is the same value that's already in your vision. That's just kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. I'm fighting myself over this, but I want the same thing. And that's what's so important about this exercise. You're not many parts fighting each other for what each part wants. No, you're one whole being. And this is a process of integration, that becoming more whole. So, wait, I lost where that was. So when you elicit a value or values from your resistance that's already in your vision, you don't want to just blow them off as oh, well, that's the same one. No, they're adding more information to this. What is it about the fulfillment of the values from the resistance that's slightly different than the fulfillment of the values from the goal that you have? Those values have more dimension to them. Just because they're the same name or the same value doesn't mean that they don't have more to add to this. So we want to keep them. So don't just write them off and say, oh, well, presence is the new value. No, all three of them count. And the peace and the love that you got from your resistance is going to be slightly different than the peace and the love that's in your vision. If they weren't, there wouldn't have been any resistance there. So there's something more that within these values that's important that needs to be added. You used the right words. I'm crying over here. Oh, okay. Well, I hope they're good tears. You put a smiley emoji. So yeah, well, this stuff goes deep, and not surprised, because we have a lot of pain that we're carrying around, and it's so unnecessary. So unnecessary. And all that pain is doing is usually creates that sort of away from strategy. I'm trying to avoid the bad. It's like, well, how's that working out for you? Not very well. Not very well at all. So let's turn that around and then now make that part an ally as we go forward, fulfilling all of our values, becoming whole again, integrating ourselves. That's what it's all about here, is integration. Once you're integrated and you have clarity about what it is that you want, nothing is going to stop you. And when I say nothing is going to stop you, I don't mean that you're going to achieve every single goal. That's not the point. You won't be stopped when it comes to your fulfillment and how deep you want to take that. And there is no limit that I have experienced of how far you can take your fulfillment. It just keeps going deeper and deeper. And when I say fulfillment, that's not that blissed out thing where I'm just not doing anything but sitting at home and watching TV. No, it's very active, alive, and engaged. The objection I'm struggling with is I don't feel good enough. Yeah, so this stuff is going to start to surface. So what happens? So how we normally deal with that is what we call a re-imprint. And that is not, it's an advanced process. I only teach it when I certify coaches. I only teach it there because it is a very advanced process. And we know there's an imprint whenever we hear things like, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve it, et cetera, et cetera. So for right now, Vicky, there's a good workaround for this. Ask yourself, what if you did deserve it? What would be different? How would you know that? And from that information, you can act as if you do. And that's a temporary solution for now. What's really going on here is probably an imprint that needs to be re-imprinted. Self-love first to be more attractive to guys. No, stop the self-love stuff. All right, I talked about this yesterday. Self-love is only limiting your love. It's also creating a delusional split that there's a part of you that does the loving and a part of you that receives the loving. And this is just creating the very thing that we're trying to dissolve right now. We're trying to integrate. So when you put self in front of a value, you're creating a division. We don't want to do that. So you are love. The only love you will ever know comes from you. Yes, it feels like people give us our love, but that literally does not happen. Okay. When people love us, what's really happening is that we're activating the love within ourselves, and we have a sense of connection with that. Very, very important. I'm not trying to diminish it by turning it into like an intellectual thing. It's no less powerful. But what's most powerful is realizing that you are love. You don't need to do self-love. Just stop excluding yourself, which is an illusion. Stop trying to exclude yourself from your love. Stop. This is part of the sort of delusional split that we create that's creating the very conflicts that we're trying to integrate. So we don't want to create more of them. So just be your love. And yes, when you are your love without thinking you need to love yourself, you do become more attractive, and not just to the opposite sex. You become more attractive to everyone. What are common values people have for handling procrastination? Stop looking for someone else to give you your values. The important work here is to elicit this from yourself, to sort it out from yourself. Someone just handing it to you it's not going to work. I just keep asking what's important about that, like what's important about being present to sensory experience. Yeah, keep going. There might be more values to find here. My resistance is the same as my value, freedom, having enough money saved to do. And okay. However, I don't want to spend my savings because of what if. Yeah, so freedom is big, right, Sabine? Freedom is a huge value. So it includes both wanting to spend your money and wanting to save your money. What a good thing to understand. What a great thing to understand. So when it comes to fulfilling freedom, instead of trying to decide, oh, I do it this way or I do it that way, no, you can do it both ways. This is what integration is. Okay. It is both important to enjoy your money and spend some of it, right? And it's also important to save some of it. And so this is what it means to really integrate. To fulfill a huge value like freedom is going to take multiple strategies. It's not all one way or the other. And so as we do this process, we become more whole. And this is why it is important to go after what we want. In the process, we grow and become more integrated and become more whole when we do this kind of work. Without this kind of work, you have the people who achieve and you have the people who don't, and they're both miserable. So when you can understand this and you can go at what it is that you want to create, what you want to achieve from a place of wholeness and a place of being fully integrated, and when you're not, you know it and you know what to do, you have the tools to make it work and integrate yourself, you're unstoppable. You become unstoppable. And that's the beauty of doing this work. All right. So we don't want to be up on our resistance. We're just creating more problems. We're just creating more resistance. So someone's saying, how can I find the value causing my procrastination? Same thing. So know what it is that you're referring to, because a different task or a different context or a different goal, there might be different intentions behind that procrastination. So be specific about the thing that you're wanting to do that you're procrastinating on. And then ask yourself, get to the part, connect with the part, welcome it, the part that's procrastinating. And then you ask yourself, what is your positive intention behind procrastinating? And listen, open up the void, and let the answer surface. My resistance is trying to protect my desire to fulfill my highest capacity. Is there more than that? Well, you'd want to know what you mean by this highest capacity, because that's very, very vague. You want to be more specific than that. But fulfill my highest, protect. So oftentimes resistance is about protection. And so the question then is, well, how do you preserve the positive function of that protection? Because protection is important, while doing away with the limitations. So like I was saying about security and safety and all that, most of the time people are holding themselves back because they're acting as if their life is being threatened or their existence is being threatened. And it's like, that is not actually happening. So protection is important, but you're overprotecting, right? You're protecting to the point where you're severely limiting yourself, and you don't need to. So that protection, check in. Is it working well for you, or is it really limiting you? And it is important to protect yourself. Just know to what extent and what degree is necessary, and then no more, because then it'll start to limit you, or it always limits you. Protection always limits you to some extent. We just want it to limit us to the least extent. I'm learning that I can be happy without money. Well, of course you can. I mean, yes and no. I mean, we need our basics, right? But money should be in service to your happiness. But a lot of times people go about it the other way. They think I need money to be happy. That's not the case. But make money to help you increase your happiness, but don't depend on it for happiness. Comfort is my reason for procrastination. Okay, yeah, that's very common. And you do need a certain amount of comfort. That is important, okay? But it's not very fulfilling. So what some people will do is, because comfort is a lot easier to put their hands on than happiness, people sell out their happiness and go for comfort, okay? And then when you double down, triple down on comfort, you realize very quickly there's not much fulfillment in it. It's very temporary. There's no real like happiness in it, right? But we have to be somewhat comfortable, just like we have to be somewhat secure, right? We need enough. So then ask that part, what is important to it about comfort? And elicit some higher values around that, speaking specifically to that part. And we want to include comfort in our lives because, like I said, it is essential. We just don't want to think that that's the way. Or what happens is, when people are not conscious of this, and this is a lot of what happens with procrastinating, we, like I said, because comfort is more accessible, we go to comfort rather than do something that takes more engagement, maybe more time, and go for something bigger like happiness or joy or peace, right? But when we sell out those values and go for comfort, we find out very quickly that comfort is not that fulfilling. So move beyond comfort. So like I said, your resistance needs to be integrated so that you can stop fighting yourself and fully and completely align to your vision. Are your values of success and happiness compatible with your vision? So these values that are coming out from your resistance, are they compatible with your vision? Of course they are. Of course they are. Yes, it's not true. Happiness comes from both within and out. Can it be bought? No, I don't believe it can be bought. That's not what I'm saying here. How do you use happiness? I mean, how do you use money to enhance your happiness? That's what I would say. It cannot create happiness. You cannot buy happiness. Money does not create happiness. Can you use money to do more things in your life that make you happy? Yeah, you can. All right. So you're going to bring back your vision in front of you. And we're going to integrate these values from your resistance into your vision. Now, like I said, if some of the values from your resistance are the same as the ones that are already in your vision, you still want to add them because they have more here. So when you add these values from your resistance, even if they have the same name, to your vision, notice what's different. Notice what do they add? What layer or dimension do they add to your vision? And so I say this next, often the same values exist in your vision, right? That does happen a lot. And if it didn't happen, don't think that you're doing anything wrong, because sometimes it doesn't. But isn't this amazing that often the values that drive our conscious desires for what we want are also driving our unconscious resistance? So what does that tell you? We're one whole being. So it makes complete sense. You are one whole human being. You're not actually parts that make up a whole. You're a whole, whether you realize it or not. So let's go back. I want to make sure that everybody's doing this. So I'll give you a few moments to do this. Take your values from your resistance and add it to your vision. I don't deserve good things. This is not true, but I don't know how to let it go. So yeah, again, that's going to be a self-worth issue. Like I said, it's probably going to be due to an imprint, which really you need a coach to walk you through and re-imprint on that. For now, first of all, you can ask yourself, well, how would you know it if you did deserve good things? And the truth is, there's probably nothing there. There's probably no answer to that, because there is deservingness is not a real thing. But that should soften it up. And then ask yourself, well, what would it be like if I did deserve? What would be different? What would I feel? What would I see? Could I just go for this? So you can, this is something that's not going to, Tony, you're going to need to deal with this, and it's best if you deal with it with a coach. But what you can do in the meantime is say, okay, well, I am going to go toward my vision as if I do deserve it, and see what happens. Make it kind of an experiment. Francis says, can you give me an example? An example of what, Francis? I know there's a delay. All right, maybe we'll come back to that. So by now, you should have your values from your resistance integrated. So after integrating your values from your resistance and integrating them into your vision, ask yourself if there are any more objections. If there are, you just repeat this process until there are none left. I did this one time with a client. I probably had to do it 20 times. He had one objection, one piece of resistance coming up after another, and then we just kept running this process, integrating. And then finally he ran out of objections. He ran out of resistance. And I was like, okay, how do you feel? And he's like, I'm doing it now. I'm starting now. Like when you have no resistance, you just go. If there's no more objections, no more resistance, congratulations. Like, how amazing is it to see this vision in front of you with no resistance. Complete clarity and connection to it. No objection, no resistance. That exercise made me anxious. Well, keep doing it until there's no more anxiety. So for procrastination, I integrate comfort and freedom into my vision, along with my top values of happiness and joy. Yes, do that. And what's good about that is you're putting comfort in a proper perspective amongst other values. So that's really good. And it is important, so you don't want to exclude it. What happens for a lot of people when they invoke this whole willpower discipline thing, they completely cut out things like comfort and rest and playfulness and fun. They think, I'm disciplined. I can't indulge in those things. Those things will force you at some point to do them. And that's when people are like, they're working, and then they suddenly find themselves doom scrolling on TikTok or binging Netflix series. And they're like, wait a minute, hours have passed. How did this happen? It happened because you repressed important parts like the need for comfort and the need for fun and playfulness. Those things need to be integrated into your productivity. And you're not going to be very productive without them. So that's that part of you that's saying we need to stop, we need to take a break. And so procrastination happens when you're not accepting that and you're not making time for that. But if you make time to be playful, you make time to be comfortable, and you schedule that in amongst working hard, being productive, then it's balanced. And then all the parts are being fulfilled. And so you will experience fulfillment. So yeah, comfort is a necessary part of this. You don't want to only focus on comfort because then you'll create another problem there too. But it needs to be consolidated. So I've already given several examples, Francis, of resistance. Just talked about one, procrastination as a form of resistance. You drop truth bombs. Deserving this is not a real thing. Okay, good. Yeah, it's not. And being good enough, right, or deserving, like, how would you even measure that? How would you even know that? Who's keeping score on those things? It's impossible. So that's why it's not real. Self-worth, not real. There's no way to measure it. So stop wasting your time with that. You're welcome, Tony. My vision seems too big, too far away, but I'm seeing that I need to start acting from these values now as my life is closer. Okay, well, you can pull your vision closer. You can also focus in certain areas of your vision. It's okay if it's really big. Mainly what your vision does is it sets the direction and it lights the pathway. So yeah, if you have, so some of you might need to do the process a few more times to eliminate any more objections. Sometimes we have more than one, that's possible. And then some of you are already done. And you just set yourself on an obstacle-free expressway to fulfilling a powerful vision. Isn't that amazing to see that in front of you? And we're going to hear from someone who I coached through the very processes that I'm showing you here.
Definitely life-changing. Especially to find your values and to use your values as a driving factor towards your goals. It makes life so much better.
So you would recommend that they do it?
Definitely. It creates a nice balance. I can't remember the exact word. There's when everything is in balance, your behavior is, I really can't remember the word now.
Congruent?
There's congruent, that's the word. knowing my values and knowing that that's driving me, it makes me more congruent, because usually if you don't know your values, you tend to think values that society has placed upon you. But working with you, once you know your values and those values are true to yourself and not defined by society or defined by other people. So you definitely feel more congruent knowing your own values and strengthening your own values rather than values which you think are your values.
Yeah, so he came a long way in a short time. He did amazing.
Definitely.
So question, do you think that doing this instead of trying to bulldoze over your resistance, is likely to yield a better result than what you've been doing before, resisting resistance? Do you think that this way will yield a better result? Right. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty clear, huh? Like, once you know this way, it won't even make sense to you to ever do it the way that you did before. And maybe there will be something a little bit habitual, like we kind of fall into habits, but you'll be able to stop it and say, okay, I know what's going on. I can do something different now. Are you willing to promise me that you'll do this instead next time resistance comes up? Are you willing to commit to that? Do you promise? Excellent. Promise? Yeah. So pinky promise. So and the reason why I'm wanting you to do that is so you really commit to this, because it will absolutely change your life. And I've got so much more for you too. There's so much more here, but this is so simple. You cannot tell me you don't have the time to do this, because this will save you a ton of time. This will save you so much frustration and pain and suffering. When you just connect with yourself and you find out, well, what does that part want? That part that I used to demonize, the part that I used to call an inner saboteur, or, it's like, no, all parts of you are valid. All parts of you are trying to fulfill a positive intention. You just want to find out what that is. Just like the Japanese soldier. He just wanted to follow his mission. He needed a new mission. And that's what you do when you welcome this part. You're welcoming it back home. And you're saying, okay, your mission is no longer this, it's this now. Okay, so we covered the first two modules. Now the next one goes really deep. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. So give everyone a chance to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water or something like that, so you can be ready for this next part. Okay, so Yulia, can we have the timer?
Well, I definitely, like, physiologically, it's like this huge relief. Like, I just feel completely liberated. And then I feel way more competent. And I feel like the next goal that I'm putting ahead, I can do it. Yeah, so I'm feeling now that I've got that piece. And it's the thing is, it's not like, oh, okay, that's magic, on to the next. It's kind of like a settling in process that happens. And so now I was mentioning, I just felt liberated. I could feel it in my body, and it's such a release and a relief. And now I also feel like I have so many more possibilities that I can now that path is cleared. So now I can start focusing, and I have more clarity, and I'm feeling like it's not a control thing. It's just I feel more competent, and it's it's not coming from outside forces anymore. It's all from within, and I have those resources. I have those powers within me. Things that are going on around me with my family. I'm using self-concept. So I'm disassociating, or I'm putting myself, as the observer, or I'm putting myself in the other, or I can sort of detach a little bit more. I'm not getting so emotional. Before, I was just reacting to everything around me constantly. Everything was happening, and I you know, bouncing. I just felt like I was bouncing from one thing to the other, and I couldn't hold anything new, or I couldn't deal with situations that were going on. I get more emotional about stuff. So yeah, that's definitely changed, and now I feel like I can move forward onto bigger goals. Or, well, if I can do this, and I know the process, and I know what I needed to do, and I know what the resistance was around it, and where that came from, then I can use those tools again. So you're just constantly compounding those experiences, and so then I have more positive examples that I can draw from, rather than. And then I'm also realized that I also see I'm not focusing on things that didn't work, or or the big emotional things. But I know how to shrink that down and bring in my positive template, and have my positive movie in front of me, and all my tools and resources. So that's definitely changed for me, and I'm beginning to see things differently, and I don't feel so bogged down emotionally when things come up. Is a big thing.
And so what is it like to even learn this about yourself, that like these positive shifts, like, oh yeah, the fact that you're saying, yeah, I'm not so reliant external validation, I'm feeling more competent, I'm not so reactive. I mean, what's it like to learn this about yourself?
Well, I think it's pretty great. I mean, I've used words like liberated, excited, and yeah, it's where I've wanted to be. It's where I've wanted to be, and just didn't have the tools to get there and the resources to get there, and knowing that I now have that and I'm capable of that. It's pretty fantastic. I mean, I'm not saying like, oh, life's rosy and I can.
Yeah, we're still human.
Right. I mean, but it's not tripping me up as much as it did before. Yeah. What can you ask me that question again?
I think I just said, what's the learnings that you've had,
Yeah,
about yourself? That's kind of.
Yeah. I think the learnings are. I'm not even buying into the whole societal trap. I mean, whatever I can do, whatever I want to do, I'm totally capable of it. I mean,
Okay. Now I know everybody's not quite back, even though it's been 5 minutes, because it always takes a while to get everybody back. But Rob Schwartz here. Hey, Rob. Didn't know you were here. He asked a question, so as we're waiting for everyone to come back, I'll address this. He said, I'd love for you to comment a bit more on deserving. How is that less real or measurable than qualities like love? If it's stopping us, it seems real in our experience. So I 100% agree with you that when people, especially when we're doing this type of elicitation and something like deservingness comes up, yes, absolutely, this feels real to someone. And it might even feel, I wouldn't say it feels as real as love. I think love is on a more, how do I say this? Let me just, for lack of a better word, love is much deeper within us. It's just something that we are. When we're born, if you have children, you see in babies, like, they are love. Like, they're just gushing love everywhere. They're gushing other things too. But love is one of those things. And it's just amazing to see that. I remember the first time my kids were born, it's just like, it's such an eye-opening experience, because that's what that little being does. And that little being doesn't come out wondering if it's deserving of love or deserving of food, milk, having its diapers changed. That's not there. It's not there at all. The baby cries when it wants something, and the baby just loves. And so love is something we're born with. Deserving or not deserving, that whole idea is not something we're born with. That is something that comes in later. It comes in later when a parent, most likely, whoever the person is that's been giving that baby love from the beginning, that unconditional love. Later, as we're developing our personalities and becoming more and more aware, still very young though, like an imprint usually happens before the age of 7, when there is a communication. Well, I wouldn't say an imprint, but an imprint specifically regarding deservingness or being good enough or self-worth. When a parent communicates in a way that is very limited, and I'll give you an example of what I mean. When the kid is compared to, like, well, you should behave well like your sister does. Or why don't you do your homework like the kid down the street does his homework, or he's always listening to his parents. Or so a comparison would be a good example of a parent communicating through a very limited means. And the child takes this as meaning that all of this unconditional love that he or she has been surrounded by since he or she was born, wait a minute, maybe I need to earn this now. Maybe it's conditional now. Now I need to be good enough to deserve it. And this is terrifying for a child, because now it calls into question something that they just assumed would always be there. Maybe you could even say take for granted. Now the parent doesn't usually think that way. The parent doesn't usually feel that way. The parent probably unconditionally loves that kid, but they just communicate it in such a way that the kid takes it differently. And this pretty much happens to all of us. I think maybe I've met 1 or 2 people in my entire life who doesn't seem to be affected by this thing. And one of them is actually Mark Andreas, Steve Andreas' son, because they were probably very careful about how they communicated to their kids, and making sure that something like this didn't happen. And Steve has actually even written about this in some of his books. And he taught this to me. That's how I know what I'm telling you now. Again, don't give me credit for this. Now, you can give me credit for having worked on this issue in myself, and I'm able to recognize it in my clients very quickly, and then we do the work on that, because yeah, it severely limits people. In fact, we'll probably be coming out with a video pretty soon where I worked directly with a client who had this issue of feeling like he didn't deserve it. And by the time we were done, that was gone. That limiting belief was gone. And he did give me permission to use it. So we're actually working on editing the video so that we can publish it and you can see it. But yeah, it severely handicaps and limits a lot of people, even very, very successful people. They still feel like they don't deserve it, so they work like crazy. But like the first thing I did when I was working with this client is I said, well, how would you know it if you did deserve it? And he was like, I have no way of knowing that. I don't know. And I said, okay, exactly. So I wanted to soften up the belief a little bit. So that's different than saying, how do you know when you're experiencing love? Well, it's very easy to feel, and you can describe that feeling, and you can describe what was happening and what was going on very easily. And in fact, you can just access it right now. So yeah, love is very real in ourselves. Deservingness is not a feeling like that. It is a concept, and it is a concept that you took on at a certain point in your life, probably based on a way that your parents communicated to you, that now you have to earn your love. Now you have to earn the love that we give you, and that's just not true. And here's the thing too, is that you can dissolve this. You can dissolve that concept. You don't have to live your life from that concept any longer. And yet love will remain. I've never seen anyone, well, not that anyone would want to, or be able to dissolve like love from within themselves. So love is just going to be there. It's always going to be there. But this idea about deservingness is just an idea, and it can be dissolved, and you can get on with your life. And at this point in my life, like, because I went to work, once I realized what was, that I was dealing with this kind of issue, I went to Steve, he was still alive at the time, and I said, I think I'm dealing with a self-worth issue. And he said, okay, well, go read my book on this certain pages. And then do these exercises, and then I just kept applying what I'm about to show you here, the self-concept model, and to the point where that whole thing just burned itself out. And anytime I saw any of it come up, a feeling of like I'm not good enough, or I'm not deserving, or I feel of low self-worth, I went to work on it immediately. I did not try to push that feeling away. I faced that feeling and dealt with it. And after a while, those feelings stopped coming up anymore. And that's why I say I completely resolved it, because it's been several years since then that I've ever had that feeling. And trying to look back on it and try to take on that limitation again, to ask that question of whether or not I deserve something, or am I good enough. It just seems so foreign. It just seems such a strange way to live life, even though that's the way I live the majority of my life. But thinking about it now, it's just like, it does not make any sense anymore. That does not make sense. And even when I'm working with people, I feel the same way. When I'm working with clients and they bring this up, and I'm just like, that doesn't make sense for you. It doesn't make sense for anyone. Like I said about babies, they don't come into the world wondering if they deserve or not deserve, or if they're good enough for love. They're just born naked into this world, like we all were. No guarantees. No one says this person gets to deserve and this person doesn't deserve. There's no entity above us all that tells us who deserves and who doesn't deserve, or who's good enough and who's not. And we die, same thing. It doesn't matter, deserving or not deserving, good or good enough. We don't take anything with us. It's gone, right? So it's all the same. And as real as it may feel, know that you can dissolve it, and it is limiting you, and you can be much freer, much happier without it, and you don't need it to achieve a lot or be successful. It's quite the opposite. It is getting in your way. And people who become very successful, who carry this belief with them about deserving and not deserving, that's what imposter syndrome basically is. They thought whenever they could get all the success and surround themselves with success, that somehow that would prove that they deserved. This is not how this works when you carry this limitation with you. So they surround themselves with all this success, and they still feel like they don't deserve it. So unless they work with someone or have an intervention, most of the time they find a way to destroy it all. And you see this a lot in celebrities. Because they don't feel like they deserve it, they find a way to prove that. And yeah, it's really sad when that happens. And it's like I said, it's completely unnecessary. Okay, I think everybody's back, huh? So I think tears welling, happiness happening. Very good, Tony. I'm glad to see that. Do you have a book on this? No, I'm working on it. Been working on it for a while. But this comes up a lot in our trainings. This comes up a lot when I coach people. And so just know, for right now, because it's a very difficult thing to do on yourself. And like I said, it can take years. Just know that it's not real. Start with that. That will start to move you in the right direction. And call it into question. Okay, so if you're feeling like you don't deserve, how would I know it if I did deserve it? Just ask that question. And then for it to not stop you, just say, okay, well, I'm going to act as if this doesn't apply. I'm going to act as if there's no such thing as deserving. And I'm going to go at this thing that I want, this vision in front of me, as if there's no such thing as deserving. That's my hypothesis. Damon told me. So I'm going to test his hypothesis that there's no such thing as deserving. Make it an experiment. And that should free you to move forward on this. And then what might start to happen, and it might, like I said, might take a few years of testing that finally it falls away. It dies. It's just a stupid idea. It's a limiting idea. And I don't mean stupid. I don't want to, not saying that like people here are stupid for having it. Everyone carries it around. I carried it around. Once it dies, though, yeah, you look back at it as like, that was ridiculous. I don't want to get into the whole like, oh, I wasted my life, because no, it's just a part of processing life. But yeah, there's a lot of waste that happens when you live through that when you live with that limitation over you. Damon, just have your words transcribed from all the coaching you do. That was part of it. That's how the book started. And then we're going to get it out either this year or next year. Okay. But this is something we commonly talk about in my trainings and coaching. So this is not going to be lost, and I have made videos about this, so it's out there. Okay, all right. Let's get back to the slides. All right, and so when people are, if you want to know more about how I dissolve that, I'm about to show you, because this is the model that without this model, like, it probably would have taken me 10 years instead of like 2. Because the model gives you a very exact way to work at this. And so when it's not just about fulfilling your values or aligning with your values, it's about becoming what you value. And when you become that, you don't have any space anymore in your life and within yourself to wonder about whether or not you're good enough. It's just like, you're too busy being what you value to even deal with that question. So what is the importance of transforming? Without the ability to transform yourself at will and with predictable results, your visions will always seem like something out there that you have to chase. Good for motivation, but not good for living the ultimate fulfilling life that you want to live. But when you can become the person who already has it, creating the life that will truly fulfill you becomes automatic. What would it be like if instead of chasing your values, you become your values? What if you embodied each one of your values as certain and solid qualities of your identity so you never have to strive for them ever again? You would just naturally align with your values because that's just who you are. Now, I want to take a step back. This is me after I had learned a bunch of NLP, and I got really good at it, and I had some major breakthroughs in my life, and then I hit this plateau, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought I was on the way up. I thought I was doing great. I thought it was just success and happiness and fulfillment from this point on. But no, I did hit a plateau, and I really couldn't figure it out. And my teachers up until that point were just like, Damon, just keep practicing. Just keep doing the same thing. What I didn't know at the time is that a lot of those NLP models that they had taught me were either not quite true NLP models or they had been taught to me incorrectly. And that was until I met this man. I mean, I was working from those models incorrectly until I met Steve Andreas. And man, did he wake me up. And at first I wasn't sure I believed him because I've been working with these other teachers for years. And then he was like, oh yeah, they got that wrong. And I was like, well, how do I know that you've got it right? And he was just like, well, test it out. And so I would test out everything that he said, and he was right every time. And I was now chipping away at that plateau. I could feel progress was happening again. And I would send him email after email with more and more questions. And he was like, I'm happy you're asking all of these questions. I love your eagerness, but I cannot keep up with them. So let's get on a video call. And I think I can wrap up everything that you're asking in much faster this way. So we would meet on Skype, and I'd have all these questions. But of course, people are saying here that I'm dropping truth bombs. Wow, having a conversation with Steve just kept opening things up. And he would even start to laugh. And he was like, I could just see this, like everything's opening up for you. And I'm like, yeah, and which often made more questions. And we're like 2 hours into this, and he's like, okay, Damon, like he was in his late 70s at the time, poor man. And he was like, look, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I got to go. And I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, yeah. And he's like, let's pick it up later. So we would pick it up at another time. And finally, after a while, he says, Damon, I know what you're after. I think I know what you want. And actually, I created a model that addresses exactly what you're looking for. And I was like, wow, okay, well, at least that makes one of us. Because I have no clue what I'm after. I just know I'm after something. And he couldn't have been more right. He said, go learn this model, the self-concept model. And I think it's what you're after. And if you have any trouble, if you need any help, just let me know. But do all of the exercises for this model and do every part of it, every step of the way. I think that's what you're looking for. And oh man, was he right. It was exactly what I had been looking for, even since before I was pursuing or learning NLP, because I was in non-duality for a long time. which is a kind of like a philosophy slash spirituality thing. Nothing brought it together like this model. And so I was doing everything he said. I started working on the first quality that I wanted to transform, which was gratitude. And within an hour, I had the transformation just by following all of the steps. I couldn't believe what happened, that I went from feeling like an ungrateful person to a grateful person, and using my own lived experiences, not faking anything. And I went from feeling uncertain about something to feeling very certain about something in my life. And I felt the shift and the change dramatically right then and there. So I wrote him an email telling him everything that I did. And the next day I got this email back from Steve. Hi, Damon, your email made my day. It's obvious from what you wrote that you made very good use of what you have read, and that is the best kind of compliment. And then he goes on to say, given what you have done so far, maybe you should teach it after practicing it and making it your own. Now, I was in the beginning stages of becoming an NLP teacher, and the problem was the teachers who I had been going to kept dangling the carrot saying, yeah, we're going to have you teach for us someday. They weren't really serious. They just didn't want me to compete with them. And then I was having trouble attracting people because I was doing live workshops. This is before I was doing YouTube. I was having trouble attracting people to my workshops because they were like, well, why would I go learn from you? I'd just go learn from these other people. So this was exactly what I was looking for in every way possible. This was the solution that I was looking for. And here, the guy who created it was saying, go teach it. I'm retired. Go teach this. And whenever he presented that to me, I was just like, I don't think I can do that. My knees got weak. I was like, wait a minute. It felt like somebody was carrying the Holy Grail and then just said to me, okay, now it's your turn. I was like, whoa, I don't know if I can do this. And I actually came back to him and said, Steve, I'm not sure if I can do that. And he was like, well, why not? I'm retired. No one else is teaching it. And I don't know anyone who knows this as well as you do. If you don't do it, maybe no one will. And so I said, okay, Steve, let me work with this model for a little bit more. I want to make sure this was just not just a fluke. I want to see if I can transform more qualities. I want to see if I can do this predictably. And I want to see if I can do it with other people. Because up to that point, I was coaching people, but I was not using this model to coach people. And then the results were amazing. And I was having one transformation after another. I tried it on a volunteer, a friend of mine who she would let me practice NLP with her. She had a transformation, and I was just like, this is amazing. I can't not do this. So that's when I decided, like, not only will I do this, but it feels like a calling. It feels like my purpose. I knew right then and there it was going to become the model that I was going to use for all of my coaching, and it was going to become the basis for all of my teaching, and it did. But I ran into another issue here. And I said, okay, Steve, so you're saying I can transform any quality? And he was like, yeah, pretty much. And I was like, okay, that's like being a kid in a candy store. Where do you start? Like, because there's so many qualities out there that we all value, that we would all like to possess, right? So actually I was hit with too much abundance. Where do I start? When you feel like now you have the universe at your fingertips, what do you do now? Okay, and that's the way that I was feeling. So I wasn't satisfied with this answer. It just seemed too enormous. Like, when you know how to transform yourself, okay, who do you want to become? Where do you even begin? Because you have so many values, so many qualities you would love to possess, don't you? So around this time, I was curious about Steve's son, Mark Andreas. And so I asked Steve to introduce us. And Mark also teaches his mother's model called Core Transformation. So I wanted to learn Core Transformation, and I asked Steve to introduce me to his son, and then I asked his son if he would come over to Santa Cruz and teach it. Because I was holding workshops at the time, and I was hosting teachers. And he said, yeah, okay. So he comes over, and he said something interesting. As soon as he met me, he says, Dad says if I tell you to try something, you will. And I was like,
Yeah, pretty much. And so what this told me is like, I guess whenever Mark asked Steve, who is this guy Damon? What is he like or whatever? One of the things that Steve said was, well, when you tell Damon to do something, he'll actually do it. And what that told me is that there were probably a lot of people going to Steve asking for his help and not actually doing what he prescribed. And then he wouldn't hear from them again. But he knew if he told me to do something, not only was I going to do it, I was going to report back to him. And this obviously had caught his attention. And so I thought this was a really good compliment. And it made me understand better why Steve was giving me so much of his time, is because I would do what he was asking me to do or telling me to do based on what I was asking. And then I would report back to him. So what core transformation did is it used values elicitation in a way that I'd never seen done before. It actually used it as part of a model in NLP. And I was very much inspired by this because I knew that values elicitation needed something more. Like, it was too powerful to just leave it as a values elicitation. And core transformation gave me that inspiration. So I thought, what if I could combine values elicitation with the self-concept model? So this is where we get into truly discovering who you want to become, understanding who you are right now. How do you perceive yourself right now? And then how to transform yourself. So let's start with discovering who you want to become. So what I would recommend is chunking your life down into 3 to 5 major life contexts. This just makes it easier. So it could be career, social life, family life, hobby, health. Okay, it doesn't have to be these. You want to use something that makes sense to you, your own organization, whatever makes sense to you. And then you want to elicit your values from each of these contexts. The other way to do this is to start with a goal. But you don't want to keep adding goals in the same context. You want to spread this out. Because you want to figure out, who do you want to become, what is important to you in each one of the contexts of your life that's important to you. And then you ask yourself, for example, in my career, what do I want? So you would do this for every single context of your life. Again, if you were here yesterday, we know we want to start with a tangible goal, something to ground that goal, and then elicit your values from that. And then you discover the hierarchy of those values. So what ends up happening is, for every context of your life, you have something you're wanting to achieve. You know what the values are in that area of your life, what's most important to you, and you know the hierarchy of what is most important to you for that specific context, which means you're going to have a ton of clarity about what's important to you, how does this translate into behavior, is you make incredibly good decisions when you know what's important to you and you know the hierarchy of that importance. This alone is life-changing to put this into practice, okay? And this is where we want to start with when it comes to transforming who you are. And then you create a vision, just like we did yesterday, for every area of your life. So you have multiple visions, one for each important context of your life. Well, think about this and just imagine it for a second. If you had that right now, how life would be different for you. Now, are you ready to learn the most important, most powerful, transformational NLP model? Because this is truly groundbreaking. So we need to understand first why this is so important. Your self-concept is the mother of all of your beliefs. Now, when you say beliefs, it's like, yeah, we can call it that, or maybe there's another word that you prefer, but all concepts are beliefs. They work the same way. They're generalizations, okay? Your sense of self is a generalization. I know it feels real. I know you're like, wait, I'm here. Yes, you are physically here. But your sense of self is a concept. It is a generalization. It's a generalization of all of your experiences. And so I'll explain further. What we want to understand too is that generalization of self is the spine that structures all of your reality. Without it, there is no reality. Without it, there is no beliefs about everything else. So your reality is constructed on beliefs. Now, I don't mean that to say that it's not constructed on things that are real, like this table that my hands are on, or talking to all of you. Yes, you're all real. All of this is real. And we use that information to create generalizations about reality. So all the things that are unseen, I'm not outside right now, but I know it's daytime and the sun is out. And so these beliefs, generalizations hold all of this in place, okay? And then sometimes we discover that we're wrong, right? Even when things seem like very natural, like that's the way it is, and then sometimes we find out, no, it's not true. But without your generalization self, you don't have any of these other beliefs. I was telling people about it, this conference we were at. Think of your sense of self as the tree trunk. And branches and roots, those are your beliefs about everything else. But without that trunk to hold everything in place, you don't have those beliefs about everything else. So you first start with a belief about self, a generalization about who you are, a sense of self. And then we have beliefs about everything else. So why not go to the source when it comes to making changes in your life that you want to stick? So for example, I can work with you on a belief about the world being a hostile place. If you told me I can't walk out my front door because the world is a hostile place, well, obviously you have a belief that the world is a hostile place. And I could try to work with you on that belief. And it would be very difficult, though, to work with you on that because there's a deeper, underlying, more powerful belief that's holding that in place. So if you have a belief about the world being a hostile place, what must you believe about yourself that creates that belief? Well, chances are, if you believe the world is a hostile place, that means you believe you are a victim or something like that. I would rather work on that belief with you than trying to get you to believe that the world is not a hostile place. Because I know that will take you further. If we can transform your sense of self from victim to someone who is successful or whatever it is that you want, then that's going to have a wide-ranging effect on all of your beliefs about everything else. So we go to the source, your sense of self, and that's where we work. So what if you could transform yourself with predictable results in under an hour? What would that do for you? What could you do in your life with that ability? It'd be pretty amazing, right? And like I said, that's where I started. I was learning this model, and I identified a problem. I valued gratitude, and I didn't feel certain about being a grateful person. And then with under an hour, I was able to transform that belief based on real lived experiences. There's no fake it till you make it or anything like that. And suddenly I felt certain about that I'm a grateful person. And it shifted and changed right then and has not gone back. And this is not something I have to practice. I don't have a gratitude practice like a lot of people have. When you believe this about yourself and you have compelling evidence for it, you don't need to practice it. You just are. It's just like all of your beliefs right now, most of them unconscious, about who you are, about what governs your reality. You're not practicing those. You're just living your life. And as you're living your life, you're selecting and collecting that information to align and support those beliefs. Because that's how we create stability. By affirming our beliefs, even when they're limiting, even when they're negative, even when they're beliefs that we wish we didn't believe about ourselves. And like I said, for most of our beliefs about ourselves are deeply unconscious. So we can't change what we're not conscious of. So some key understandings here. How you create your sense of self, how you create your sense of reality, how transformation happens. Once you fully understand these hows, you can create all of the purpose, value, and meaning you want in your life, as well as access your potential to create the life you want to live. If these understandings are not what you're currently working toward, it's time to change what you're doing, because anything else is not going to get you to your highest potential and your highest fulfillment. So let's talk about your sense of reality. Your sense of reality is based on two dimensions, time and space. You've probably heard something like this before. All of your experiences in the past, all of what you're experiencing right now, and all of anything you can imagine happening in the future has two things in common, time and space. All right, this is, like I said, the two dimensions of our reality. There's no changing that. To get more specific about time, there's past, there's present, and there's future. All of your experiences have happened in one of these, right? Location. There can't be an experience without a location. Everything in reality has a time and a location. Every experience you've ever had happened. It happened in the past, the present, or you imagined it happening in the future. And every experience you've had happened somewhere in a location. Your identity, also known as your self-concept, transcends time and space. And it's the only generalization you make that does that. It's the only concept you hold that does that. And you're probably thinking, what do you mean? Okay, let's talk about it. So let's talk about the past. Even though in almost every way you are a different person than you were when you were younger, like 3 years old. You had a different body, and especially different beliefs if you had any at all at 3. And but yet you still refer to yourself as when I was 3 years old, right? We still say that. Even though, because like this is a, this has been a debate, like, well, what are we really? What is our essence? Is it our body? Is it our beliefs? Okay, well, what if all of those were completely different? Would you still be you? So when you think of your younger self at 3 years old, different beliefs, different body, everything's different about you. Yet, you still attach through a generalization called self, I, me, that was me when I was 3. Not that that was like a separate person. So that this is what I mean by the generalization of self transcends time. It doesn't change. It's still attached to that younger you who does not exist and who was completely different physically and mentally. So like I said, you don't say when he or she was 3, you say when I was 3. And you do this the same in the future. So when you say like, I'm going on vacation next summer, or when I retire. So you are extending yourself into the future. And your future self doesn't even exist yet. So this is what I mean by your sense of self transcends time. It's a generalization that transcends time. What ties the past, present, and future together over a span of a lifetime is the generalization you make called your self-concept. It's the I, me you keep referring to. No other generalization you make transcends time this way. So what do you think happens when you make a change in your self-concept? A concept that transcends time. You get all sorts of interesting results from that. This is how we're able to heal a past. Something we thought we could never let go of. Like some of you are dealing with this idea of whether or not I deserve it. It's strongly attached to your self-concept. And it feels like you can't surpass it, but you can. And this is being held in time, an earlier past experience that dropped this in there, and we can re-imprint that, heal the whole thing. And often when this happens, and I check back with people, they don't think they ever had this problem. And I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me, you came to me and you were struggling with this, even crying, you were getting emotional, and now you feel like this was never really a big problem. And this is how this time thing, like they can acknowledge that that was a problem, but this is how time can kind of create this sort of amnesia. The way that we perceive it, the way that we generalize it throughout time and as it relates to ourselves. So it starts, we call this NLP amnesia, where the person like doesn't even really remember this being a big problem. And this happened with my wife one time. I helped her overcome something. And then the next week we were talking about it and she was like, oh, that never really bothered me. And I'm like, you were crying. This was a huge deal for you. And I had to remind her of all of these things. And this is the power of making changes at the identity level rather than just making some of these external changes. So it also transcends space. Remember I said time and space, 2 dimensions. No matter where you go, to another room, another house, another state, or even traveling across the planet, you still have the same sense of self, unchanged and unbroken no matter where you go. When you make a change to your self-concept, those changes generalize through all space and time as you experience it. So that's another thing, like you can go into the room next to you, whatever that is, your sense of self doesn't change. I've traveled a lot, and every time, like if I travel to a different country, never been there, don't speak the language, don't know the culture, I still have my sense of self intact with me, and so would you. And so this is what we're talking about, your sense of self goes with you from location to location as well. So when you change something in your self-concept, that goes with you wherever you go. That's what the line here says. Okay, your past will now support that change in the present as you project this change into the future, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, this is where, because you believe it, it happens. And again, this is not, you cannot fake this, like with fake it till you make it, or use affirmations to do this, because there's always a part of you that knows better, that like, no, that's not how things are. You have to go in there and restructure how you're creating your beliefs about yourself. That's the only way to do this. And this is the most powerful transformation a person can have at the identity level, because it transcends time and space. So let's talk about your identity. What is your identity? It's beliefs, generalizations, whichever word you prefer. Well, let's define beliefs and generalizations. Something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as an opinion, according to the dictionary Merriam-Webster. According to Steve Andreas, a generalization is the imposition of our limited mind on an infinitely complex and changing world. So this is how we have to use beliefs to navigate our world. We don't have all of the information. And even if we had all the information, you'd have to have a belief in order to make sense of it for you. So all beliefs to some extent are limited. Also, according to Steve Andreas, your self-concept is the concept or idea that you have about yourself. That's just very simple. It's a little obvious, but now that in the context of what we're talking about, it's really important to understand this. To have a sense of self, you have to have a concept or belief about yourself. Otherwise, we would just be what I would imagine maybe animals are like, where they don't really have a sense of self, or if they do, it's a very small sense of self, and they're just kind of living present moment by moment. We're much more complex than that. We're more self-reflective than that, and we cultivate a sense of self very early in life. And most of that was just rather haphazard, how that all came to be. So in other words, your identity is all the generalizations you make about yourself, generalized into one single powerful generalization, and that's what we call self-concept. So like I said, this has been happening since you were born, rather haphazardly. You didn't have much say in it, right? And then that's kind of how you've come to be who you know yourself to be. What would it be like to be able to go back in there and make it, restructure it in such a way that your experiences really support who you want to be, who you really value based on your values, rather than just like it all just kind of fell the way that it fell. That is pretty much handing you the I don't know, I can't think of a more important superpower that would be better than that. All beliefs everyone has, beliefs about yourself, beliefs about others, and beliefs about the world, first starts with your self-concept, your sense of self. That is inescapable. None of your beliefs would exist about the world around you that creates your reality without the original first belief, your self-concept. So what you believe about yourself has the greatest effect on how happy, successful, fulfilled, and purposeful you are and will be in the future. There is no escaping that either. What you believe about yourself controls everything, even your reality. It also has the greatest effect on your perception of reality, whether you perceive the world and everyone in it as imperfect, yet filled with wonders, love, kindness, joy, and plenty of resources to live an abundant life, or as hostile, evil, and out to get you. In other words, when you change your self-concept, when you transform at the identity level, it will change your perception of reality. It will look different. And you've heard this before probably, but I'll give you a reminder. What they call it, reticular activating system. Say you go buy a car, and before you bought the car, you never really saw the car around you in wherever the town, city you live in. Suddenly when you own that car, you see it everywhere, okay? That is not the universe doing that. Like a lot of times people say that kind of stuff. That's not the universe. It's now you are more attentive to that car because you own one. In a sense, that has a minor, but does change your sense of reality, doesn't it? Suddenly you're attending to, whoa, these cars are everywhere. that has a sense of a change in your reality because it's around you, right? That's not a major one. That's not like a huge transformation one, but it's an example of what I'm talking about. And I'll explain further how this directly relates to when you transform a quality within yourself. The choice becomes yours to live in an abundant reality filled with everything you need to be fulfilled and happy when you know how to transform. And I am living proof of where my life was before, and I showed you that, being depressed, and then transforming it into what I have now. Without this model, I really don't think this would have been possible, or if it was, it would have taken me a much, much longer to do it. So how do we use these understandings to make transformations? So this is how it works. A transformation is when a significant and profound shift in a person's thoughts, emotions, behaviors, beliefs, or identity occurs, resulting in a fundamental reorganization of one's internal processes and perception of reality. Once you know your values, you know exactly who you want to become. So the values work. I know yesterday it just seemed like, well, this is what I know. Now I know what my motivation is for achieving this. Now I'm able to consolidate this into a vision that's very compelling. It's very motivating. But this is where we really take it to the next level. No amount of successes or achievements will matter if you are not what you value. All of that other stuff is just noise. Who you believe you are becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So remember, I had these values here, and they were just for illustration purposes, right? What I did next, once I learned core transformation and how they took values elicitation and incorporated it into an NLP model, and I was inspired to take that process and incorporate it into the self-concept model, what I did next was I took my values, I elicited my values from every area of my life, just like I recommend that you do. I did the hierarchy, and then I went down the list and said, am I, and then inserted the value. Am I at peace? Am I a loving person? Am I a lovable person? Am I a joyful person? Am I a passionate person? All of the answers came back ambiguous, not certain. And I realized this is where the work needed to happen, because this was what was causing not only my limitations, but also my suffering. Because when you value something and you don't believe you are it, it feels bad. That's where suffering comes from. So I love this movie, The Matrix, because I feel like they, in a very entertaining way, put so many truths in there. And truths that are like kind of like theorems that you learn in geometry, right? They can never be proven or disproved, but there's something there that you can use to help you. And the Oracle says to Neo, you didn't come here to make the choice. You already made it. You're here to try to understand why you made it. It stuck with me ever since I heard that when I watched this movie when it came out. And that's what really values are about. Your decisions are already kind of made. And the best that you can do is understand why you're making those decisions. But the paradox is when you understand what's driving you to make those decisions, now that you understand that, now you're finally free to make other decisions. All right, don't tell your brain in a knot over that. Your choices are driven by your intentions, your values, and by what you believe about yourself, more specifically, what you believe you are capable of. In other words, even if you value success, if you believe you are a failure, you will find a way to fail. There is no escaping who you believe you are. And I actually believe this about myself. I believe that I was a failure. You will make choices that will cause you to fail. In order to understand your choices that lead to failure, you will blame. You will blame the economy, you will blame other people, and you might even blame yourself. That blame won't help you, and it won't help, of course it won't help anyone else either. Blame will only cause you to remain stuck. When you know your values, you know what fulfills you. But what you believe about yourself will determine whether or not you will reach that fulfillment. Because if you believe you're a failure and you want success, you can want it all you want. But if you don't believe it's possible, you won't get it. When your behavior and your beliefs align with your values, you will experience fulfillment and purpose. When people are looking for fulfillment and purpose, and I ask them what do they want, or even if I ask them what is their goal, and I say, what will that do for you? And they jump straight to fulfillment and purpose. It's like, yes, of course we all want that, but we cannot go at it directly. We need to know what are those values that you need to fulfill in order to get there. You will also experience confidence and self-esteem. Another thing that people want to jump straight to, but you have to understand what your values are first. And the kind of confidence and self-esteem that will make you fearless as you pursue your endeavors. And this goes back to what I was saying about self-worth. Once you dissolve that whole self-worth thing, and now failure and success are not attached to this idea of your worth increasing and decreasing, what would you not go after? You would become fearless, because that's what's holding most people back. They're clinging to what little self-worth they think they have, and they believe that if they succeed, they would have more self-worth, but they also believe that if they fail, it would lower their self-worth, and then it just doesn't seem worth it. Like, why would I risk that? And so they don't do anything. But the truth is, this whole self-worth thing is completely imaginary. So imagine if that was not something that you believed in, and that would never stop you again. What would you not do? So, for example, with the whole success thing, if you value success and you believe you are a successful person, you will feel good about yourself. And because you value success and you believe you are successful, you're naturally going to behave in alignment with success. You're not going to question it. You don't have to focus on it. You don't have to will it or discipline yourself to do that. It's just natural because you believe it, you value it, you're just going to align with it. And you will become more successful. And you will see more and more opportunities to be successful in the world, because life is not static. So you're going through life and you're just recognizing those opportunities, and you're taking those opportunities, and there's no real friction about this. You do it because it feels like it's in your nature. If you believe you are a failure and you value success, you're going to feel bad about yourself. This is where low self-esteem comes from. And because you believe you are a failure, you will behave in alignment with failure. This is a hard one for people to believe. They were like, why would I do that? And it's like, because the confusion and chaos that comes from acting out of alignment with what you believe is true about you is much scarier, to the point where we would rather stay with the familiar. We would rather stay with the known than act outside of something that I believe about myself, because the confusion and chaos about who I am is too high of a price to pay, or it's too confusing. And this is where it goes back to what I was saying. Your unconscious is hardwired for clarity and staying away from confusion and chaos. So chaos and confusion about who you are, that's just way too scary. It's just much easier to align with a limiting belief like I am a failure. Your failures will support and confirm your belief that you are a failure, making your belief that you are a failure even stronger. And this compounds on people. I've met with people, I've coached over this exact belief. And so I'm not a therapist, I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't treat people who are suicidal. And I make that clear. If anyone comes to me with that, I say, no, you need to see a professional. I've had people tell me this by the end of our sessions, and they said, this was a lifesaver. And I'm like, kind of like, yeah. And they're like, no, you don't realize I was actually contemplating suicide, and I knew better than to tell you that, because I know you would have treated me, or we wouldn't have worked on this. And I was like, you're right, I wouldn't have, but I guess maybe in retrospect it's safe to tell me that, or but when you are working through something like this, and as life goes on, you just feel like you're more and more a failure, and you can't get out from underneath that. Yeah, I could see how that would lead a person to be suicidal at some point. I've never been suicidal in my life, so I can't say for sure, but if my life had been going the way that it was going before I got into therapy, and then from therapy to NLP, I could see if I felt there was no way out, that would lead me to being suicidal. And thank goodness that that was not where I went and that I made a different choice. So why don't we just act in opposition to our limiting beliefs? Like I said before, that seems like the simple solution. Why doesn't a person who believes they are a failure just do successful things in order to break through that limitation? And I like to refer to the oracle again on this one. We can never see past the choices we don't understand. So we see people like this, right? It's so obvious to us that someone we know who maybe we care about, they just keep making one bad decision after another. And for you, you understand that that's a bad decision because you're not them and you're able to step outside and see them doing that. But they cannot see past these choices that they don't understand. And so you can bring this back to yourself. What is keeping you where you are? What is keeping you from creating that vision that you see before you? This beautiful vision that's very compelling. You feel very motivated to move toward. Simply, you cannot see past the choices you don't understand. And this is where coaching is extremely helpful. That's what a good coach does, is help you see past those. So you're not hardwired for success. You're not hardwired for happiness. You're not hardwired for fulfillment. It's just not necessarily what we're hardwired for. You're just hardwired to survive. That's the most important drive you have in you. And in order to survive in a chaotic world filled with unknowns, nature wired you to avoid confusion and chaos and align with what is familiar and clear, even if it makes you unhappy. So I want to explain how this model works, which is not just a model, but also how your self-concept works. We start at the level of experiences. So when we're born, and I don't know exactly when this happens, we probably have a natural instinct on how to select and collect information to turn them into experiences, but this is still rather undeveloped. Like anything else, it takes practice. Now, experiences themselves are subjective. How can I say that? You can say, well, I know I actually had an experience of, going to the store yesterday or something like that. Yes, I'm sure you did, and I'm sure that there's an objective truth to that, but the experience itself is subjective because experiences all have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay, but you've never experienced a true beginning or an end. You don't remember being born. And your tools of developing experiences were too undeveloped to really create an experience of being born. It just happened. And maybe you still have some residual information in your brain that, recorded some of that, but you don't have an experience of a beginning, of being born. And if you're listening to me right now, you're obviously not dead, so you've never experienced a true ending, right? So all throughout life, you have experienced one continuous, unbroken consciousness. Even when you're sleeping, there's still a level of consciousness. If there weren't, when you hear your alarm that wakes you up, you wouldn't hear that. So there is a level of consciousness that's happening there. And throughout your life, in order to make sense of all of this information hitting you all at once, you've had to mark in, mark out, and you say, this is an experience. Like, this is a happy experience, this is a joyful experience, this is an experience with my friend so-and-so. That's what we do. So we create experiences. We select and collect information to create experiences, and the experience means something to us. We categorize it somehow. So we start here, and then from our experiences, we generalize about ourselves. Qualities, aspects of who I am. A quality is a generalization about an aspect of who I am. So we have experiences, we generalize those experiences into qualities. And then those qualities, when we have a generalization about all of our qualities, all of the aspects of who we are, that's where we get our self-concept, our sense of self. Now, whether or not I like that concept is where self-esteem comes in. This is what creates self-esteem. So aligning with my values, or you aligning with your values, creates self-esteem. You cannot go at self-esteem directly. But when you align your behavior to your values, you feel it right away. Your self-esteem goes up. Now, what if you could generalize all of the qualities about who you are, generalize them into your values, and feel certain and solid about that? Well, that's going to elevate your self-esteem and keep it there. It's not going to go up and down. I mean, it might fluctuate slightly, but it's going to be very, very stable. And that's one of the points of doing this. So to give you an example of what happens here, let's say, I'm in grade school, maybe first grade. I get an A on a test, and the teacher says, "You're very smart." I go home, show it to mom. Mom says, you're very smart. Show it to dad. Dad says, wow, you're very smart. Mom puts it on the refrigerator. The neighbor comes over and says, your son is smart. So I've had this experience of making a A on this test reinforced over and over that this means I'm smart. So I start to generalize myself as a smart person, quality. I'm an intelligent person. But the opposite can happen. Maybe I'm on the playground and I'm playing with some kids and an older kid comes around and says, boy, you're really stupid for doing whatever it is that you did. And I go, oh, okay. So I take this home to mom, my consultant, right? And I say, Mom, I did this thing and this boy, called me stupid for it. And mom might say, well, the boy shouldn't have called you that, but yeah, that wasn't too bright. And I'm like, whoa, am I this thing called stupid? And then I take it to dad. And I said, hey, Dad, this thing happened. And Dad goes, yeah, well, that boy shouldn't have called you that, but yeah, that wasn't too bright. And now I start to generalize myself as being stupid. So if you had the same kid, same town, all happening concurrently, all things same, except one kid believes that they're intelligent and one kid believes that they're stupid, they're going to live very different realities. And we're going to see that manifest around them in very different ways. And you can imagine how that would play itself out. One believing he's intelligent and one believing he's stupid. And this is very unfortunate. And this is what I keep saying about all of the compilation of who you are has been a very haphazard process until now. Because now we understand how it works. And now we make these things conscious and we can restructure them in a way that serves you and being exactly who you value based on qualities that you value. And that's where we do the work at the level of qualities. People try to change self-esteem directly. You see this as most of what people are teaching. That's where affirmations, are a thing. But it doesn't work because, talk about the iceberg. There's more to an iceberg that's below the surface. So trying to address the iceberg at the tip of the iceberg doesn't do anything. And that's what affirmations are an attempt to do. Until you change the structure of these qualities so that they go from uncertain to certain about who you are and ways that you value, nothing is going to change. So we change it one quality at a time. We transform it one quality at a time. And every time you do a transformation of a quality, it will alter and transform a piece of your self-concept. And as long as we're moving this in a positive direction, meaning toward what you value, every time you do that, your self-esteem goes up and it stays there. It doesn't come back down. It doesn't bounce around. And so that's where your values come in. With values that you elicit from what's important to you, that's how we know where to go and do the work. And so every time you do this, because you value it, because you know you value it, you have greater and greater self-esteem, greater certainty about who you are, and greater confidence. And then you do this enough times, and then you start tapping into greater purpose, greater meaning in your life, and of course, fulfillment. So like I said before, a quality is a generalization about an aspect of who you are based on behaviors and experiences that support this generalization about you. Examples are happy, successful, fun, optimistic, authentic, unhappy, pessimistic, cynical, lazy, etc. So the positive, when I say quality, qualities tend to have a positive connotation, but the way that we mean it in self-concept is just an aspect of who you are, a generalization about an aspect of who you are. So that can be positive or negative. And as you can see, what do these look like? Values, but they can also be qualities. So we do the work at the level of qualities, like I said, and when you know what your values are, and you go one by one and you transform each one of your values into qualities of who you are, this was my hypothesis after Mark came over and taught core transformation, and I wanted to incorporate values into the self-concept model. And part of what Steve had taught me was when you value a quality, the more you value that quality, when you transform it, the higher your self-esteem is going to go. But what he didn't say was that also the higher your fulfillment and your meaning and purpose in life. And I thought, well, why don't I just go there, straight to my highest values and work there? And when I elicited all of my highest values and I asked myself, well, am I these qualities? Like I said, all of them were ambiguous. I didn't feel certain about any of them. And that's what I knew right there. Well, it's time to do this work. I know where to pinpoint that work. And when I did that, when I went down the list and transformed each one of my highest values into certain and solid qualities, the result was unbelievable. Like this happened in a matter of months, and my life changed so fast, so rapidly, that I like almost couldn't believe it. I even went to Steve and I was like, okay, here's what I did. I didn't tell you first, but I can tell you it worked. And so now I'm telling you what I did. This is the piece that I'm adding. You told me to make this my own. Here's what I did. And he just came back and said, I'm not surprised it worked so well. And so this became the way that I coach every client. Became the way that I teach my coaches to work with their clients. Because what could be more important than understanding first and foremost, what is the most important thing to the client? What is it they want to be? Sure, they have problems to solve, and we'll get there. But without knowing who you want to be and what's most important to you, you're solving the problem at the wrong level. You know, Einstein said you can't solve a problem at the level in which the problem is being created. That's why we need to go bigger. We need to go bigger than just what the problem is. We need to go to the level of who you are and what's most important to you. And then solving that problem becomes a lot easier. When you use your values to understand who you want to become, you use the self-concept model to transform yourself into what you value. And I promise everyone here, when you do that, your life will never be the same again, and in all the best ways. Instead of being an unfulfilled person, not living up to your potential while chasing goals that wouldn't make you happy even if you achieved them, you become a happy, successful, accomplished, and fulfilled person pursuing the wonders of your potential because you enjoy it. Not, do I deserve it? Not, am I good enough for it? It's more becomes a curiosity. What can I do? Or what can't I do? And the results have zero effect on your self-worth because that doesn't even make sense anymore. Do you want that? Good. Excellent. So I also want to show you that this is not just me. This is not just me doing this. There are people just like you who are doing the same thing.
Because I was like, not only did, I felt like because during the process, you have to ask yourself, are you,
Sure.
whatever the quality is,
Sure.
are you, for me, outgoing? No. And it was like a hell no type of thing too. It wasn't just no, it was like no. And then after I did the process, I asked myself again, and I was like, yes. And the immediate thing that went through my mind was I felt like I had been lying to myself this whole time.
Wow.
Like it was in there and I just lied to myself this whole time about who I was. So that was amazing. And then when I went out and I was like, my behavior changed. And I knew in my mind, like, I want to be the person who knows no stranger.
Yeah, nice.
And I kind of forgot about that moment until I think it was like 2 months later. I had a friend come up and some people didn't know, like, I had a shyness.
Yeah.
Because of my personality, it doesn't seem shy.
Yeah.
But I didn't talk to strangers. Like it was strangers. And as an adult, I would still say stranger danger. So yeah, I didn't talk to them, but people didn't know because when we went places where there were people, I would stay by them and follow them.
Sure.
But they didn't notice. So they were like, yeah, you talk to everybody. No, I was talking to you and you only because I was following you. Yeah. And then they have to think back to this and they were like, yeah, you were. I was like, yeah, I don't talk to people that I don't know. So he came in and we were in the grocery store, and I was like, you know, hey, Frank, hey, Jill. Like, I was talking to all these people, and I knew their names. And he was like, he looked at me, he was like, all right, shy guy. And I was like, that's when I really, I was like, holy, I am the person who knows no stranger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I knew all of their names and I didn't even realize it. Like, I had conversations with these people at the grocery store randomly.
How do you think that has, when you think about your life trajectory, how do you think that one transformation has impacted the trajectory?
Right now, like,
Sure.
it's a lot, because you begin to have different conversations, you make different friends, and then, like, financially,
Sure,
it's about to be crazy. So,
that's
you know,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. So it's about to be crazy. So previously, last year, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I got a low battery. So I never made six figures in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And my process was, I'll make six figures, and then at some point I'll set a goal to make seven figures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And what it did, one day I woke up and I was like, I mean, it kind of like woke me up, and I was like, 2020, I should be able to do seven figures. Like, without, and it was like, without, and I was like, and I thought that was weird too, because I was like, it didn't make sense, because I was like, how can I skip, like, from a piece of six figures to seven? Like, that's crazy, because, you know, you got to make 83,000 a month. It's a lot,
Yeah.
you know, to do seven figures. So I'm like, but I was so confident in it. Like, I don't have, and then I didn't have all the steps. I was like, I don't have all the steps, but it doesn't make sense for me to not be able to do it. That's what I knew. Like,
Wow.
It doesn't make sense for me not to be able to do it, because I have, like, the internal processes to do it.
Yeah.
The how to is going to come at some point.
Absolutely.
And it'll be in 2020. I don't know when. So
it sounds like between here and there and here still, there's been some major changes, sounds like.
Yes, because even in the beginning of the year, like January, February, I was like, man, I'm off, because I didn't really do anything, because I was trying to figure some stuff out. So I was like, January, February, and then it's like March. I'm like, I'm running out of time. But then when I pieced, everything came together, and then I did the math. I said, in April, I should have a six-figure month. And I counted the months.
Yeah.
And it equaled to seven figures.
There you go.
It was right on target. I was like, holy. And I didn't even think the way that I was doing it was going to be the way that I was going to get it.
Sure.
Yeah, it was supposed to be some other thing.
So that, to highlight that a minute, that's pretty interesting, right? Like, I've noticed that as well, like in life in general, when you're creating a vision, you're transforming to become the kind of person that would know that vision. It's interesting how it tends to never quite play out like you initially thought. Right? I don't know if you've noticed that, but like something I've in experience has told me that you always start with a plan, and you're learning as you go. And the person that starts the plan, the person who ends up at the destination, that those transformations in the middle are so, those help inform you how to alter the plan in order to get there, right? And in many cases, if we knew the exact path, we'd probably already be there, wherever there is. Right?
Yeah.
You know? And so I just find that, I think that's incredible. So you mentioned something earlier that I want to make sure that we chat about. You mentioned that you said, what was it? That you said it was almost like when I asked myself and questioned again whether I was, what was it? What was the quality? Outgoing. You're like, it was like you were lying to yourself that entire time up until that you. Can you say that? How you said that again? Actually.
Yeah, it was in the moment I realized, I felt like I had been lying to myself the whole time.
Yeah.
Because I realized that I was that person.
Yeah.
But it was strange, because it was like 2 seconds ago before I asked myself, am I outgoing again?
Yeah.
it still would have been like, I felt like it would have been a no.
Sure.
But then when I asked myself, it was like, yes. And it's like, you have this confused, like, this doesn't make any sense. How did this even happen? I spent about 35 minutes doing something with my brain, and it just rewired it. And then now I am all of a sudden outgoing. It doesn't make any sense.
What do you think what is that like? What do you hypothesize is the cause of that experience, or what does that say about maybe our minds from your point of view?
I feel like a reassociation to, there's an understanding of what missing resources we needed to act in the moment, and the realization in our brains, which is like in our imagination, is a real thing. Like, you can't differentiate from reality and non-reality. Yeah. So when you integrate the two processes, it becomes real to the subconscious, and you begin to act it out. So that's how nobody ever asked me that. That sounded kind of smart. Yeah. So, and I think that, integrating, because the non-doing and the doing they're trying to get at the same value, and you don't understand that. So when you integrate them, they're like, oh, I understand. I'm trying to get to the same place by not doing and doing. So once you integrate it, it becomes one, and you can act out what you wanted to act out instead of not doing. Man, out of fear. So.
Let's see. So pretty amazing, huh? He's Antoine was someone who, whenever he learned the self-concept model and just really took it to the fullest extent, and it's obvious, like by what he was explaining in there, this is not about just like making yourself feel better. This actually turns into different behavior. It turns into different actions, and those behaviors and actions feel very natural. It's not like he had to force himself to do these things. In fact, he didn't even realize he was behaving differently until someone pointed it out to him. And then he naturally found his way to fulfilling those values more and more, because that's who he believed himself to be. And this has happened
because I was like, not only
more over and over. We've seen this. Here's Adriana. My life has transformed after doing this model. This model was the only one that actually connected back to life. I'm no longer in survival mode, but thrival. I've always been fascinated by human potential and performance, and this model allowed me to actually transform myself fully. Sounds cheesy, but that's true. So, do you find this helpful? Good. Can you see how mastering the self-concept model, or putting it into use in your life, will put the power of transformation in your hands? Great. Okay. So we covered the 3 modules. How about, before we do that, are you getting excited about the potential of what using this model can do for your life and for becoming precisely who you want to be? Someone says, confusing but insightful. Okay. No worries, because yes, anything that's new to you can be confusing, but that doesn't mean that it won't work for you. If we just stop the training right now, wouldn't you agree with me that this has been life-changing for you so far? Awesome. So how about we do a 60-second recap of everything that I covered yesterday and today? What do you think about that? All right. So we're not going to start a timer. I don't know if I can do it in 60 seconds, but that's going to be my goal here. All right. So this is where we started yesterday. Why are you here? And this would be a great question for you to think about. What made you show up? And now that we're here, I don't know. How would you answer that question now? I talked about my mentor, Steve Andreas, and how he endorsed me to teach his self-concept model and to use it for coaching. Talked about this, that I love, this quote: "A man who procrastinates in his choosing will inevitably have his choice made for him by circumstance." That is no longer you anymore. You're going to take action. Talked about where I came from 14 years ago to my life now, starting my YouTube channel, which, like I said, would not have been possible if it weren't for NLP. The really cool people I get to meet, like Maria Menounos, Nas Daily. Talked about the life that I have now created for myself, which is the life that I could have only dreamed about like when I was a teenager, and now I'm living it. Talked about our team that we have here, how we've grown as a business, especially we got started right at the beginning of the pandemic and we ended up thriving. I talked about my NLP journey and where it all started. Talked about the plateau that I experienced even after I was getting good results from NLP. And I talked about meeting my mentor, Steve Andreas. We got into the modules, starting off with the vision and this quote by Wayne Dyer: "I will see it when I believe it." That's the importance of a vision. And then having that vision light your pathway. We talked about going from want to value, getting the hierarchy of your values, and then creating that vision. And this is the questions and the framework and we use to elicit those deeper unconscious values. And then we put it all together and consolidate that in a powerful vision in front of you. And it's like a compass. It shows you the direction even when you don't recognize the territory. Then we got into overcoming. Well, overcoming what? Well, overcoming all the things that hold you back from going forward with your vision and making that a reality. We talked about how to elicit that resistance, how to elicit the values of that objection and integrate those values into your vision. Talked a little bit about the unconscious and the conscious mind. It doesn't have to be so mysterious. I gave you an example of how your resistance, your internal objections work, just like this Japanese soldier who hadn't surrendered even 29 years after Japan had already surrendered, until his commanding officer came back and gave him new orders, which is what you need to do with your resistance. And I showed you how to do that with this framework of questions to elicit resistance and then get it stated in the positive and then elicit your values from there. Integrate that into your vision and do this until you have no more resistance left, and then you're off and running with no resistance. And then I went into transforming, where this is the next level. Transforming your values, becoming your values, transforming into the person you value, the parts, the qualities that are most important to you. I talked about my own journey with this, how I had hit a plateau, and then was introduced to Steve Andreas. Steve Andreas introduced this model to me, and then combining it with values elicitation after being inspired from core transformation. And then I talked about discovering who you want to become, understanding who you are, transforming yourself, and how to do that. We start by chunking your life down into 5 major life contexts, and then creating a vision from each one, getting clear about what's important to you, and then understanding how to transform, just going from what you value into a quality. And when you do this with enough values, your life will never be the same again. It will completely change who you are so that the world around you, in a sense, has to change. I talked about these truths from the movie The Matrix, about not being able to see past the choices you're making, which that doesn't have to be the case anymore. I talked about how this model works. We work at the level of qualities. We transform one quality at a time, which alters your self-concept with every transformation, which then has an effect on your self-esteem. You ultimately become what you value. And like I was saying, when you do that, you don't have room for not good enough, not deserving. That stuff, it doesn't even make sense to you anymore. And even if it still did, you don't have time for those questions. You're too busy living your life. So I want to show you one more person. Like I kept saying, like I've said throughout this entire training, I want to get it into your head that You don't need any special talents or intelligence to do this.
The significant transformation, the most significant, because a few happened, but the most significant started really already after the first session, which was a big surprise to me. I wanted to work on something that had been bothering me already for 20 plus years, and I couldn't get a grip on it or change it. And so when we just started, you asked me, of course, the question, so what do you want? And all of a sudden we were working with a part that showed some resistance. And it was very interesting that after that part was integrated, everything changed. However, I didn't realize it, or I almost couldn't believe it. It was sort of unreal. And the sessions after that went in a different direction than that I originally started with, but it was just because we integrated this big conflicting part, and that was the end of that. So it was very interesting. And I have to say, after the first session, I wasn't too sure where this was all leading to. Sort of like, it's weird. Like, yeah, I couldn't really get a grip on it, which I tend to want to do, like, you know, a little bit of control. But it was perfect. And then another thing that was very interesting to me was that I came across a part, and I think it was session 5, that I was very mad at. And I was just so angry with it, and I'd never had that before. So it must have been hiding deep, deep down, because I've worked with parts a lot already. And now all of a sudden this one came up. So I'm glad we were able to work with that.
Oh, that is awesome. I think, was that with the Quality Empowered? Was that the one we were working on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how is this now affecting you in your day-to-day life? Like, what have you noticed changes?
It's more natural. I feel really good. And even this morning, I mentioned to you, I have a new office and I started a guided meditation group. And last night I was sort of like, do I not need to prepare or, you know, do some self-talk, like you can do this? And none of that was necessary. I feel so strong and empowered, and, you know, and it was beautiful this morning.
That.
See, like, it becomes naturally who you are, almost as if you've always been this way. And in fact, there's a little bit of that to this, because like what Antoine was saying, he woke up to the fact that this was already a part of him. It always had been, and he had kind of been lying to himself. So in a sense, you already are all of the wonderful qualities that you value. It's just right now you can't see it. Just like in the Oracle is saying, you can't see past the choices you don't understand. So you can't see past these limitations because you're not consciously aware of them. You don't quite understand them. But that doesn't mean that you can't be. We can change this. So knowing what you know now, is this a model you would love to implement in your life to transform? Awesome. Are you happy you attended this training? Awesome. Can you see how this model could transform your life? You don't have to fully understand it. That's the beauty of it. Do you realize the advantage you now have in your own development just by using what you've learned here today and yesterday? Awesome. Can you see yourself using this model to create the life you want to live by becoming who you want to be? Awesome. Even if you just use a tiny fraction of all that I've showed you, would you say your time here has been well spent? Awesome. Love to see the feedback. Would you like to spend even more time together, going even deeper and further on creating, honing, securing, sharpening, and transforming yourself? Good, because the reality is, even if you only used just a tiny fraction of all that we've covered today and yesterday, don't you feel like you've taken a gigantic leap forward with your personal development? Okay, good. That was the point. I don't know what you knew about NLP coming into this workshop, but it'd be a safe bet that some or all of what we covered today and yesterday was new and valuable to you. Processes such as discovering your values, overcoming resistance, and how to transform your values into qualities. And if you like what I've shared with you so far, you're going to love what I'm going to show you next. If you said to yourself that you want to go even further than our brief encounter today. So the reality is, you could try doing this alone, but here's the reality. Yes, I did this work solo, but only after years of NLP training and mastery. I had years of NLP training and mastery before I encountered the model. And even I needed mentorship from Steve Andreas, the man who created the model, to understand and apply the core parts of the model. Can you learn the self-concept model yourself? Absolutely. But the learning curve is steep. On your own, it may take months or even years to reach the depth and effectiveness of a certified coach. Hidden spots, like deep personal insight, is hard to reach by yourself. That's why we created a pathway that gives you expert support so you don't have to do this alone. So here's the choices. Choice 1, we part ways with you and hope that on your own you can make a go of this. Or choice 2, we could take a more active role and responsibility for your success to create a situation where our relationship could evolve from more one and done type of a deal to an ongoing, growing, and mutually rewarding relationship. I choose the second option because I want to live in a world where anyone who is passionate about improving themselves and their lives can transform themselves at will and with predictable results. As I mentioned, you're going to have a choice. You've already made the choice. Now you have to understand it. You don't have to understand it, but it helps you to understand it so that you can always make better and better choices. So here's what we're offering. Self-concept one-on-one coaching. Transform yourself so that you create the life you've always wanted. Professional guidance so that you can become the ideal you who instinctively and congruently pursues your ambitious goals, who, like Antoine and like these other people I keep showing you, who now it becomes natural to align with what is most important to you. It becomes natural to align with your values and just do that without having to like think it through or give yourself a lot of self-talk and try to work yourself up into it. No, this becomes, what you value becomes your natural way of being and acting. So it's guided step-by-step transformation. And this is what working with one of my coaches who I've trained myself, this is what it unlocks. Confirm your true goal and discovery and why it matters. Connect deeply with your core values and become them. Identify and integrate unconscious resistance with expert help. No NLP background needed, just commitment to change. You'll be led gently but firmly through your biggest breakthroughs. Skip the trial and error and accelerate lasting internal shifts. This is not a program, it's a customized one-on-one transformational journey. When you create your identity, imagine the possibilities of what you can change in your life when you have the confidence to overcome your fears, motivation to do what lack of discipline and lack of willpower have kept you from doing, and the purpose in your life to truly live your potential. I want to show you one other person who's doing this.
My name's Paul Hornsey-Pennell. I've had 3 one-to-ones with Joe, just 3. So, bit of history. I'm 60 years old. I have been racked with self-doubt, depression, suicidal thoughts, really struggled financially, ups and then big downs. And all this stemmed out of what can only be described as a, let's just say, challenging childhood and upbringing in my family. And I couldn't for the life of me, even though I have spent tens of thousands of pounds on courses, coaches, therapists, counselors, you name it, couldn't shift this stuff. And it was just like being persecuted on a day-by-day basis, except I was doing it all on my own. I've coached for 35 years at the very highest level in terms of international sport, and I've coached thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in business. And part of my frustration has been, I can really help people. I can really get them shifts, but I just couldn't when it came to me. I've had coaches in the past, but given up. And yet, here I am after just a few short sessions. Financially, I've had my best month ever, which is amazing. My outlook on life, as I go into my 60s and beyond, the level of enthusiasm, energy, optimism, passion, excitement, creativity, you know, this desire to actually go further and further. I last had this when I was probably in my late 30s. And I'm so grateful. I mean, I think it's amazing. At 60 years old, I've got this outlook on life. There is not any hint of depression. I can feel that the thing that was right at the core of it, it's just gone. And here's the icing on the cake. So financial results, outlook on life, everything is improved. But the thing I really hadn't expected is that probably for the first time since I was a very, very small boy, I get on with myself, enjoy my own company. I've got this enthusiastic, encouraging dialogue going on internally to learn, to develop, to grow, that I can't remember ever having in my life. So here's the thing with regards to Jo, two aspects. One is her attitude. She is dedicated towards her clients getting results. She's fascinated by people and the process. She is committed and has your back, rest assured. And whereas I've had other people that, you know, they kind of are a bit separate, a bit disconnected, I totally, it's like I enjoy the sessions with Jo because we are working on this together. So her contribution cannot be, I almost can't calculate it in terms of the impact that she's had. But the second thing is the model that she uses. So rather than somebody just giving you a bag of tools, most of which you don't know what to do with, the model that she works to, it's quite extraordinary. The best way of describing it is that when you get familiar with it, it's almost like you can just, well, it's not almost like, you can just start intentionally slotting in new enabling, empowering beliefs that improve your outlook, improve your performance, improve your quality of life at will. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So I have absolutely no hesitation in recommending Jo 100%.
So he is referring to one of our coaches, and he is referring to the self-concept model. And I mean, if that's not a sincere testimonial to what this model can do with a good coach, I don't know what is.
My name's Paul Hornsey-Pennell.
So what would you pay for that kind of transformation? Well, let's put it in perspective. Myself, I have spent over $100,000, well over $100,000 in my own development. Once I caught on to that investing in myself was going to be the most important investment I could ever make, I was not shy about it, and I started really investing in myself and promising myself that I would make it pay dividends for me, and more than just financially. And that commitment, that promise to myself, has paid those dividends and much, much more. A full year of coaching with me one-on-one. So if you do want to coach with me, there's a lot of limitation there because there's only one of me, and it's not what I do full-time. I have other stuff that I'm doing, so I do take on some clients. But to coach with me one-on-one for about a year would be $30,000. The most expensive training I ever paid for, one single training that had hands-on coaching, it was just a week, and it was $9,000. So that's the most I've spent on one single training that included coaching. Today, what we're offering is 2 months of one-on-one coaching with a certified self-concept coach. And when I say certified, they are trained and certified by me. This is not something I leave it up to only other people to handle. No, I actually train these people. We make sure we test them. They can fail their examinations, and they fail until they get it right, and then we pass them. Just $2,900 for 2 months of one-on-one coaching. So there's only 10 spots available. And how you do this is you go to selfconceptcoaching.com. You don't pay for this. You apply for it. You have to meet with a coach to do this. So it's not like you go and put your credit card in and do it. No. We have to meet with you first because this is customized. So there are only 10 spots. You can imagine we can only handle so many people coming in at one time. Our certified coaches are already in high demand, so they are currently coaching other people, and this is why we have limited spots. So the offer closes this Wednesday, June 18th, or when the spots are filled, whatever comes first. And then after that, the price returns to $3,300. So during this time, during this window that we're opening it up, you can get it for less. Again, you can't just go and pay for it and start with a coach. You do have to go and apply for it at selfconceptcoaching.com. You will meet with someone. That part you don't pay for. You get a consultation to make sure that what you're wanting is realistic and what we know that we can offer you. We're not going to take you on as a client if we don't believe we can help you. So here's what you get. 2 months of one-on-one self-concept coaching, approximately weekly sessions. There's no cap on the sessions, but the tendency would be once a week for the sessions. And unlimited support between the sessions. So that could be emails, voicemails, whichever way that you prefer. So between sessions, it's not like you're alone. You can still get support from your coach via email or voice message. You get tailored transformations of one life area. So you come in with something you want for a particular area of your life or an achievement that you want, and that's what we work from. True accountability and customized support. And like I said, it's just $2,900, and we only have 10 spots right now. So here's someone, actually I just worked with, I was mentioning with this is someone who believed he did not deserve the success that he was wanting. And so you don't see me working with him here. This is Nate actually interviewing him, how all that went. And like I said, later, we're going to probably publish a video of what I was actually doing with him.
To anyone who's gonna considering that they were should I work is working on my own self-concept with a coach like Damon, is that my path or not?
100% worth it, because the thing is I know you like the biggest thing I think I realized like through the 2 months working with, or I guess over 2 months because he was away for a bit, but the biggest thing I realized is that there's a lot of blind spots like you just can't see, like if you don't have the training, right? Like you can't see your blind spots, and so he's really there to help and facilitate that blind spot and really hone it back into the core values or competencies, where we may call them. And that's a big difference working one-on-one with someone, because you're actually just dealing with things that are coming up in your actual life, like in real time, whereas trying to like figure out yourself doesn't work very well if you don't have like the proper training, right? Because you don't even know what you're missing. Yeah. So that was probably the biggest aha I had. Like, I'm like, man, I should have done this a lot earlier. Because that's the thing. Like, that's the thing. I think there's like a misnomer there, in the sense like if you don't have the proper training, like I get why you can't act. Like, it's a lot harder. It'll take a lot longer, and it'll be a lot more painful because like you're trying to like access it, but it's like, and it's not really like, it's not very linear in that sense either, in the sense of like what comes up and what happens. Like, so having to deal with things as they come was really nice as well. Like things that were coming up.
So you'll probably, my YouTube channel I'll go in more in depth of what we worked on, and it was that whole deserving issue. And you can see now he's a lot different, and he's been helped. His life has changed tremendously as a result. So what happens when you apply? You go to selfconceptcoaching.com. You're going to book your call. Just takes 2 minutes to fill out the form. You're going to speak to one of my trusted facilitators, and they're going to guide you to a better understanding of what it is you're wanting, the help that you want, and the transformation that you want. And then you're going to transform your self-concept in one context of your life within the next 2 months. So it's not magic, it's just mastery. And here's our guarantee. We can't guarantee outcomes in one-on-one transformation. No one can. If you have coaches who are guaranteeing outcomes, you should know right there that is not even possible. So they're trying to guarantee something that they can't deliver on. But here's what we do guarantee. You will work with one of the most qualified self-concept coaches. Each has passed a rigorous certification process, been mentored for 12 months by me and other senior coaches. They have demonstrated all core techniques live. They've had to demonstrate this with an actual client, and we observe them, and we either pass or fail them. If they fail, they have to do it again until they get it right. They also have logged hundreds of hours in study, training, and coaching. So, not a fit? Well, let's fix it. Transformation requires trust. So after 2 sessions, if you don't feel aligned with your coach, we'll either pair you with someone else or we will refund your full investment. If you're not into it and we can't help you, we don't want your money. We want you to keep your money and go find somewhere else to invest it. But we're confident that that's not going to happen. If you're committed to this and you're into it, this is going to work. By now, you see how serious we are about this and what it can do for you. I'm absolutely confident in your success. So let's go all in, all together. So reminder, this offer will end on June 18th. We close it out, or when the 10 spots are filled. So you want to make sure you get in at selfconceptcoaching.com, get your consultation. And remember, there's no, you don't have to buy, or at that point, you don't have to enroll. You're still checking it out, and we're checking you out in the consultation. So just get that set up, and that coach will answer all of your questions as they come up. And like I said, we want to make sure this is a good fit for on both sides. All right, so this is what it looks like when you go to selfconceptcoaching.com. You're going to pick a time on the calendar to meet with a coach, and that's all you need to do right now. Remember this quote. It's so important. I live my life by this. A man who procrastinates in his choosing will inevitably have his choice made for him by circumstance. So here's the deal. If you're not sure what to do right now because you're faced with a choice, just do it. Make a choice and then make it right for you. So go for it. Take the chance and then make it right for you. That's what life is about. Just don't wait. So if you're not going to do it, then just know that that's the choice you're making and go on with your life. And if you're still not sure and you're hesitating, just set up the consultation. Just go meet with one of our coaches so that you know for sure that you're making an informed choice. So like I said, 2 months of one-on-one transformation coaching. It's outcome focused. There's no cap on sessions. Unlimited in between sessions support via email or voicemail. It's normally $3,300. We are dropping the price down to $2,900 if you enroll between now and the next few days. But again, there is only 10 spots, so those could fill up. All right. You're very welcome. I see a lot of thank yous. And Andre says, thank you for what you shared. Choice 2 was made. Great. Awesome. Looking forward to hearing more from you. Is the ultimate NLP practitioner okay to learn NLP? Yes, absolutely. That's exactly why I created it. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Yuli, you want to bring Nate back on?
All right. Well done, everyone. And Damon, and thanks for all your hard work over the last 2 days. Yeah. Happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to you all. Some common questions that people ask is, when with sessions, and I just want to add a little bit of details to some of the things that Damon mentioned earlier. Is the average session is about once a week, but based off of your goals and the change work that's required, that can vary. So what you'll do is when you after you're assigned a coach that's matched for the changes that you want to make, you'll meet with them. You'll review your goals, your values. They'll then build an NLP model of how you organize your sense of self, and then based off of that model, they'll start making the appropriate changes. So for those of you that are really feel called to that vision that you created yesterday, there's no other more direct path to it than the work that you're about to do with us, and that's our commitment to you. So that's why there's not necessarily a set number of sessions. And my other recommendation is for those of you that are starting to apply. What I would say is, for your sessions, the average session will be about an hour, but book an hour and a half, because if you're in the middle of a significant piece of change work, your coach is going to want to finish that work. Again, the speed, and what you'll notice, a common statement is the speed and effectiveness of the work is based off of the model, right? And the level of skill set of your coach and the mutual commitment they have for you. So if you're showing up with a big commitment, they're obviously matching that, and it's really fascinating what you'll be able to accomplish.
Somebody asked if NLP and self-concept the same thing. So the self-concept model is an NLP model. So the model was created using NLP.
Yeah. And our commitment to that model is because it's the apex of what's possible, really, with NLP. And it gets right to the heart of the matter. Yeah. Well, cool. Do you have any other questions around your duration, expectations, for those of you that are really committed to their goals? All questions are good.
And if you can't think of any, just make sure you book your consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And as questions come up between now and your consultation, just remember to take note of them, bring them to the consultation. That's what the coach is there for, to answer all of your questions. So it's a pretty straightforward. And the coach that you're going to have the consultation with, they are trained in the model, so they can answer deep questions about how this works. They've been through it, and that's why they're able to help customize your experience with your coach, whoever you're going to be assigned to. Well, we work on all areas or just focus on one. So we make it a point to say just one. However, if you were able to make that transformation, and most people are, then we're going to keep working with you to have more transformations in the time for the sessions and the 2 months that you have set up. So most of the time we can do more, but we want to be cautious of telling people that, so that they don't set that expectation there. Some people, it just depends on what level you're coming in of awareness and how big of an issue you're working with, and so it's not a one size fits all thing. So we try not to raise the expectations too high, because everybody's different. But most of the time, our clients have multiple transformations within that 2-month period. What we guarantee is at least one.
Absolutely. So when you think about your vision and your values around that primary goal, the one that would make the biggest difference for you in your life right now, I would recommend starting with that, and then showing up to each session, doing your very best. And if there's recommendations or homework given between sessions or anything like that, do that your very best, and you'll be able to compound time in a really great way. Yeah, of course. We want to under promise and over deliver, and I think you'll see that in the results. And coaches that you're going to be working with, they really are the top percentile of coaches, when it comes to working with your unconscious mind and making change permanent. So
yeah, we will not certify someone if we're not sure that they have this down. We only certify people when we're sure they've got it.
100, you should see what's required for them to go through, and then even post graduation, it's the level of expectation is creates an exceptional coach, and the type of person that commits to that is an exceptional coach. So you mix them again, like very much like what you hear with the case studies. You have a mix between the right person and the right model, and as long as, of course, you're showing up, to make the changes, because it really is a partnership. There are a lot of our coaches will have their clients will come back to them periodically as they set new goals, they raise their standards, they face new challenges. They come back to them because they've created a real partnership together.
Yeah. So do we have, somebody's asking if we have our coaches on I showed them on a slide earlier. I did show all of our coaches. Do we have them on our webpage?
We don't, but here's what what I would recommend. We're going in that direction. We don't have that right now, but if you meet with Henning, which he's a senior leadership on the team, when you meet with him, he's matched so many people for change work that you can have a conversation with him about that, and I'm confident that you'll find a really great match.
Yeah.
Both expert wise and a natural rapport and liking.
And if there's people who want to work directly with me, just know my time is limited, so I don't have many spots available for that. And it's not the same price. So just know that ahead of time. If you want to work with me, it's not going to be the $2,900. And you might have to be put on a waiting list. I have a lot of, not only do I have a lot of other things that I'm doing, but also I usually keep a very steady, full practice. So you can be put on the waiting list if that's what you want. And also just know that it's going to be more than the $2,900. It's going to be more than the $3,300 too. So I don't want you to expect going in that it's going to be that price and then find out later that it's different. So I'm just letting you know that now. Okay. Don't see any more questions, so I think we're done. Really enjoy doing this. I love sharing this. If you feel like getting a coach is the right thing for you because you want to really accelerate this and just move your life much faster to where you want it to be, then I can't wait to hear what results you're going to get working with a coach, one of our coaches, because it's going to be amazing for you. If that's not something that you're ready for just yet, for whatever reason, that's fine too. Glad you came. Glad, I really sincerely, even if you never spend a dime with us, I sincerely hope that what I put out here helps you, changes your life in all the best ways. That's what I'm here to do. I'm really lucky that I get to do this for a living as well. So, yeah, I wish the best for all of you.
Yeah, same here, and I appreciate you all being a part of our mission. The best thing you can do is to do the work for yourself and then be an example for those around you.
So John's asking if we still offer the 18-month program for the training. Yeah, absolutely. Just the best thing to do is just have that consultation. Get on the calendar. Henning, who you're going to meet with, he's a trained coach. He knows what we have going on as far as our trainings and what's available and all that. So just discuss it with him. What your next step is going forward. He's going to guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, he's great. It was good to see you all. Well done. And like yesterday, what I want to encourage you to do is, after the session today, I want to encourage you to write out your biggest takeaways, any action steps, all of that stuff right here underneath this video. Okay.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Look forward to hearing great things from you about where your journey